So I'll count it off.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3.
Just let's go.
1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Salutations, you fine shits. Nick here.
Aaron's here.
We're gonna do another hot takey episode.
Very juicy.
We got the hot sauce on this one, all over the place on this one. We're going to initiate the somewhat now classic debate of separating the art from the artist. Do you have any background info as to how this conversation comes up or how it came about?
I feel like it's one that I imagine it's been around forever, right? Let's be honest, right? But I do think it's one that's come up more recently. Certainly, it feels like certainly in underground metal music, even more so. There were things that seemed to used to be acceptable is the wrong word, but tolerated or
yeah.
Just we could turn a blind eye to it.
Right.
The times have changed and people have changed. We now see things for what they should have been seen for a long time ago. And I think people are now, as we discuss it more, we have to look back at these things and try to adjust how we feel about them. So it feels like something that's more recently talked about, of course, obviously with internet and the ability to talk with more people at more time.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably something that's always been around to a degree, but it seems to be becoming a bigger thing to talk about for sure.
So I actually did a little bit of searching around to see where this conversation might have started.
Mm-hmm.
It did originate within the mid to late 20th century.
Okay.
So let's be generous and say the 1920s up until 1999.
Okay.
Right. Originally, it started as a kind of term used in a literary sense. So for books.
Oh, okay.
Right. So it started with what was being considered classical literature.
Okay.
And modern literature.
Okay.
Right. Obviously, a lot of classical literature uses terminology, makes references to things that obviously are not good.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's to be plain about it. They're not good things to use anymore in modern language. We've moved past a lot of those terms and just that way of thinking as well.
Right.
So to kind of what you were saying about the internet, you're right. We do speak to each other a lot more frequently through the internet. We have access to the backgrounds of people who not just are writers, but like you mentioned, musicians and stuff like this, artists in general. And because the conversation is art from the artist, this will kind of be all encompassing,
Yeah.
Even though I assume some of our examples will kind of
lean more heavily toward music, but movie,
yeah.
art, painting, writing, all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. So, do you want to kind of start off where you stand?
For
or
me,
where you what you begin, the beginning of your I don't want to say you stand because
No.
I
I ultimately have a stance. I think what I have had, and it's one that like many of my stances, when evidence is given to me to show me otherwise, look, I cannot deny growing up a white male in suburban America, there are things I don't have to think about. Yeah. They don't matter to me because I'm not affected by them.
Right.
So because those conversations aren't happening, I think to your point where you say on the internet, I think that's where the internet breeds these things in a good way, is because it's the World Wide Web, I am now getting perspectives from lots of other people I would not have heard perspectives from before.
Yeah.
And because of that, I go, oh, yeah, I didn't look at that as, I just saw it as something kind of edgy, but I can understand why that may have been a trigger or something that would upset you.
Yeah.
Because I'm not seeing it through your eyes. I have no way of seeing it. Perspective is everything.
Sure.
And that's very important in those things. Certain time periods, certain things, I don't know why I'm reminded, something you said kind of reminded me. I remember when there was a big discussion about, I believe it's Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah.
Right? Using the N-word in Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah.
Now we understand, and it was understood, and I've heard white, black historians to say, no. Mark Twain was not using, it was the parlance of the time in which he's writing this book.
Right.
Using that word, but more importantly, it's not the word as much as if you read the story. It's the idea that Huckleberry Finn uses this word because this is how he's raised to look at African Americans.
Yeah.
But towards the end of the book, he realizes he is not that word, and he calls him by his name. That growth as a character, and that these are in some ways historic, so we keep them. But the debate is still there to say we can also understand why some people will read that and be offended, will be upset by that. And that conversation needs to take place to have a better understanding of all that sort of thing. I think for me, when it comes right down to it, is, again, as these things became more noticeable, certainly online and discussed, and between friends and so on and so forth, my view has always been, I think that these things are up to the individual on how they choose to deal with that. I don't want to decide for you. I don't want you to decide for me.
Like, what would be your actual stance on this? Because I know.
I mean, I think you can separate the art from the artist, but I think that that is dependent on you, on what. In other words, interesting enough, I was reading because I thought it was a great example of somebody who understands the transgression of what he did, understands why he did it in the moment, but also understands that he even saying, I probably deserve more shit for it. And that's the late, great Steve Albini with his band Rape Man.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting interviews that he was giving, where he was like, look, man, at the time, I was trying to be transgressive. I wanted to be outrageous. I wanted to not offend, but I was also thinking, he said, I'm in this punk movement where, yeah, we all agree women are equal. It doesn't matter that your friend's gay. They're allowed to live their life. So we thought, well, problem solved. We don't need to go any further. And realizing, well, that's my privilege that I can think that. And he even says, I'm surprised I don't get more shit. In fact, I deserve more shit for having a band called Rape Man.
I think people, when he passed away, were finding out about Rape Man.
Well, he had that interview. This was 2 or 3 years. Remember, I think he took to Twitter about it.
Yeah.
And then he did interviews and stuff like that. This was probably 2 or 3 more years before he had passed, right? And he was addressing this sort of thing.
But even in that, he was aware of what he was doing, and this isn't like incredibly after the fact.
No.
Because he was aware of what he was doing even back then, right? So the fact that he was able to kind of express his actual stance, and he was being kind of permitted to clear the air, as it were.
Yeah.
Right? I think that plays a lot into this whole conversation, right? Because you're right. He did say he should have gotten a lot more shit for it.
And still, and the last interview I says I still feel like I still haven't been totally held accountable for what for doing that.
There's something in there that I'm gonna touch on a little bit later on, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, so in those ways I feel like that's what it is for the individual, and I don't want to decide for you because how things affect you are going to be different than how they affect me. Right. How I grew up is going to obviously, you and I are both eye to eye when it comes to racism. We detest it. We don't stand for it. We don't have people in our lives who deal in that shit, on and on and on. But how I'm affected by it and how you're affected by it as a white guy and a Mexican guy are two different things, completely and totally. So what you're going to bring to that conversation is going to be different than what I bring to that conversation. So those both, and by the way, I think they're both very important for the conversation. And I understand if your reaction to it may be different than mine. And I think in those ways, it's about saying, you decide for you, I decide for me, but I respect whatever decision you make, and I will abide by that. Right. I'm not here to judge anybody on what they decide. Now, having said that, I don't care if you go, yeah, I know they speak about, killing off minorities, but I really love the riffs. We're going to have a hard time being a friend. I don't think we're going to hang out. You know what I mean? Like, there are lines for me where you go, I'm sorry, you have to, I'm not going to hang out with somebody who listens to a bunch of Nazi shit.
What if the music doesn't display the ideology?
That's that one. Again, I only have one that would fit into that, and of course that's the infamous Varg. I am a fan. Not anymore. His music now, as far as I'm concerned, is shit. he's always been an asshole, always been a racist piece of shit. I was aware of it when I first heard his music. I can't pretend I didn't.
Yeah.
Again, was one of those separating the art from the artist. I didn't care. The music I very much enjoyed. I still own probably 2 or 3 of his CDs, and I do listen to him on occasion. Would never buy a shirt, would never buy his merch, never going to see him live. I have no idea what he's doing now. Don't want to know, not interested.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where now is something where, no, bands I look into now, if there is a sense that there's something sketchy, I look into it. And if it's there, I move on. I go to the next one.
Yeah.
I don't need that in my life.
Right.
The Burzum Bridge has already been crossed. There's nothing I can do about it at this point. The music has been listened to. The thing is there. Now it is something that I just keep much more of an eye on, where I'm not going to tolerate a view. To some degree, even, I hate to say it, at least with today's Republican Party, even that. If you're a hardcore MAGA head, don't want to support your shit. I'm not interested in it. Don't want to hear your fucking rants at shows.
Yeah.
You're not getting my money because I will not support that. Yes, I had to burn all my Kid Rock CDs, but no, it's just one of those things. Like it is the way it is. You know what I mean?
Those CDs are gone with.
I still ball with the ball, but it's just to say, like, I mean, yes, and a lot of that I think also comes with maturity.
Sure.
It comes as I get older, as I meet new people in my life who have different perspectives. As I look around, and many of my friends are minorities, therefore that's going to dictate my thought in a lot of ways, understanding I do not want to hurt friends. I don't want to offend with these things. One that I'm sure we'll probably get to a little bit later, but just as what I want to say as a
precursor.
Yeah. When the whole Neurosis thing went down.
Yeah.
That is a band that you and we share very much a deep love for a very long time.
Yeah.
It was a positive in our lives. When it happened, we both were very much put back for quite some time.
Yeah.
I think you a little bit more than I.
Yes.
Because I care and I love you, you're my friend, I made sure if I was coming to get Nick or we were going to hang out, I'm not putting Neurosis in the car. I'm not going to be listening to it. Because in the end, my relationship with you means more to me than anything with Neurosis. So if it's something that's offensive to you, well, then I'm not going to bring it in the car. I'm not going to. That's just because, again, it may have been a band that brought us together, but that is not why we're friends. Right. I care about you more than I care about Neurosis. And I think that's a respect thing that I'm not trying to toot my own horn or say,
no.
Look at
and
me.
it's something that I appreciate.
It's just respect for my friendship and my love for you. Is to say, look, man, if these things make him upset, I mean, that goes with anything.
Yeah.
If it makes you upset that I keep stomping on your foot, I'm going to stop stomping on your foot. It's just, it's no different. And I think that.
I wish you would.
Note to self. So it's just, I think all of that is encompassing is being, in the end, I cannot change what artists do. I cannot do, all I can affect is my life and the people who are in it. So if those friends are offended or are upset by that or triggered by that, again, if there's a song that speaks of child molestation or rape, and a friend of mine is someone who those things may have happened to, well, why am I going to be like, hey, you should really check out this song?
Right.
It might be triggering to them. It might be upsetting to them. And that's the last thing I want to do to people I care about. And taking those things into account, I just think makes you a better person.
Yeah,
I don't think that makes you, bad. But yes, I think racism will always be the number one line for me. I won't cross that. Absolutely not. Especially if it's in your lyrics, even more so.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in it whatsoever.
I am a person that doesn't separate art from the artist.
Okay.
For several reasons. I think I touched a little bit on this during the AI episode that we had, where I feel that art is an expression of human emotion, right?
For sure.
So you don't create it unless you're not feeling whatever you're feeling, whether it's an ideology towards a certain topic or a group or whatever the case may be, right? And art has also kind of always gone hand in hand with a kind of, I don't want to say necessarily a political opinion, but it's influenced by social movements.
There you go.
Right?
For sure.
So because of this, even if it's something that's as entertaining as like pop punk or something, right? the person making the art, whatever it is, whether it's music, something visual, movie, blah blah blah. It's they're taking the time to craft it, to put the tone of the piece into it, so that when you receive it and you interpret it the way you're going to, there are already guidelines of like, hey, this is what I intended it to be, but I know you're going to take it for whatever it might be. But these are my intentions, right?
Yeah.
So when something is dark and brooding, of course they're gonna make it spooky looking, spooky sounding,
Sure.
etc. et al. Right? So because of that, that's the number one. There's a lot of emotion on the artist's side that's put into the art. So art doesn't exist exclusively from the artist, like unless it's AI. And this is what I had mentioned before we started recording. Unless something is created in a void, in a vacuum where there is no meaning, which is a lot of the kind of commercial art, a lot of the mass market type stuff, where it's just to consume, just like, hey, here's food,
Right.
eat the food, right?
This is danceable. Here you go.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. This is the beat that everybody knows.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. Stuff like that. Obviously, it's a whole other category and a whole other conversation, but primarily because it is human emotion driving the art, I would feel it's kind of I don't want to say not fair, but it's just not. I'm just not able to separate the art.
But an artist can also write as a third person, can they not? I mean, like,
yes,
you're not literally a teenager from Mars. You're not.
Right,
I don't really
of course.
want your skulls.
But when they perform the art, if those performances come with personal opinions, then
sure,
it's a lot harder for me to
I,
say.
yes, no, your live
right?
performance. Yeah,
So
I think,
for example, let's choose something that maybe some of our listeners might be into. Black metal, right?
Yeah.
When these goofballs dress up in their corpse paint and their spikes, they become the Count of Midnight.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Like they become the vampiric.
I'm dead. I'm
right,
Count
right.
Grisnock.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So that's the character.
Right.
If that were all we saw and we never were aware of any of their personal opinions, it would be a lot easier for me to say, that's all I know. I don't care about the rest. Or not even that I don't care, but the other stuff that I don't know about,
Right.
much like you said, it's not affecting me, right?
Right.
But if then during one of the songs at a live performance or in a printed interview, they say, well, you know what I think about Mexicans?
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Then that's where, okay, well, now I know a little bit more about you.
Oh,
And so because I know you were able of creating this one thing, but you're also saying this thing, how can I trust, like there's that kind of, it's not cynicism entirely, but it's, you're putting doubt in my trust of you as just an artist, as just a third person. I'm creating a world,
well, certainly, yeah. With something like you said, with like a race issue or political issue, it's like, recently, what's his name, Santana, performing live and suddenly goes into some rant about trans people and how they're, you're a man or you're a woman.
Right.
Well, there's no song, at least any Santana song I've ever said or ever listened to, that would have ever to led me to believe that he had any opinion about trans people. So, in that way, I think where, if I were a fan, I'm not, but if I were a fan, where I think I would be with him is like, well, look, I completely disagree with you. I think you're wrong. I don't know why the fuck this has to be said at your concert. I don't know how I don't know what Oye Como Va has to do with fucking trans people suddenly. You know what I mean? Like, just play Black Magic Woman and we can all go home here. You know what I mean? Right. But it would definitely color my sense of him, maybe less than the music. Like Ted Nugent is in that way.
Right.
Like, I'm not a fan. He's a great guitar player. He's got some songs that are pretty good. But he's a piece of shit. That guy's an asshole in every sense of the word, and I don't agree with his politics. I don't agree with anything that guy fucking ever said. So in that way, I don't. Obviously, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other, but it does color the way I see him.
I know there are also, there's it makes it easier for a lot of people, myself included, when somebody who's transgressive in this manner, we already don't like their
Yeah,
output.
of course,
right? That's
yeah,
a lot
yeah.
easier for us to be like, well, fuck that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, like Santana.
Yeah.
One of the things, and this is a term that I know comes up a lot in conversations like these, and it's, I know a lot of people tend to avoid talking about this, but Santana has a platform, right, where he's performing in front of a few thousand individuals.
Yeah, yeah.
And if those people maybe didn't want to express how they felt about the trans community, well, Santana just made it easier for them to express their negative opinions.
No doubt.
Because he's expressing it,
Yeah.
right? So I'm not saying necessarily it's a dog whistle, but it's he's saying like, hey, it's okay if you think this because I think this, and I'm the musician that you all came to see, right?
Yeah, and that may also speak to relationships with artists that maybe are a little weird for many of us. in that way.
Parasocial,
Yes.
right? But I think we all do this,
To
especially
a degree.
because,
For sure. Yeah.
because of the way entertainment culture moves now, right?
sure.
Like, I know you and I are a little bit older, but we still grew up in the age of the internet.
Absolutely.
Right? So because of that ease of access to not just the music and the artwork and all that stuff,
Right.
the access that we had to musicians
Oh, yeah.
also became a thing.
Yes. There used to be a sense of mystery about these people, and now it was very much being taken away.
Right. And now because I think because of how fast everything moves, musicians tend to put more of themselves out there, right? Which I'm not going to say is a negative. I think it's a positive because
yeah.
you
Makes
find
more-
out that some people are genuinely very nice
Yeah.
people, right?
And you can make
that-
a better connection with your fans.
Exactly. So because of stuff like this is obviously going to add to, to maybe the disdain somebody has for somebody.
Oh, for sure.
And it's understandable.
Yeah.
I think it's understandable
Absolutely.
when somebody, even if they're let's call them legacy musician like Santana or like Ted Nugent,
Yeah.
When they do these shitty things, all right, well, yeah, they contributed a lot to the world of music, but because the fucking world is gigantic, there's so much more music now that maybe was influenced by them.
Sure,
but
sure.
Is without a doubt being made
Yeah.
by 100% better people.
Yes.
There's a chance to move on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
More so
Absolutely.
than before, because before, I don't want to say we were isolated.
No, but
it
we
was-
have we have way more choices now musically than we
Right.
once were given. There's no doubt about that. I agree.
Yeah.
And more and maybe we don't have more choices, but those choices are much easier to go to than they would have been before. Where whatever was printed on the radio, that's what you heard. Now you don't have to worry about a radio. You can go listen to whatever the hell you want. So yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you there. In other words, if something that these people are saying or doing offends you, or you don't want to listen anymore because their views are against everything you think, good. You can just move away and walk off and say goodbye.
Because I know a lot of things when we ask, especially nowadays with the political climate being what it is, we ask, what's the bottom line, right? And I think obviously that line is different with everybody
Sure.
that we come across.
Yeah.
So if we don't necessarily accept one type of communication from politicians,
Right.
why would we accept it from musicians? Even though they're not politicians,
No.
right? But I think they have influence just as, maybe not as much, but it's just as viable.
Well, let's be honest. Sometimes I wish we would hold politicians to the standard we hold entertainers.
Of course.
Entertainers are, let's be honest. You say the wrong thing, you do the wrong thing. It's very possible that you're no longer in movies. We don't put out your records on a major label anymore.
Right.
Not because those giant corporations disagree with you. They don't want to deal with your bullshit.
They don't want to deal with it, right?
Then a politician who doesn't have to worry because they've gerrymandered their fucking district so hard, they're going to be reelected every single time. They can say whatever bullshit comes to their mind.
Right.
I agree with you. And again, I think that goes to it is just, again, you have to allow each individual to make that decision for themselves. And also reminding those who, if you hear Santana and you hear him make that rant and you go, well, I disagree with him, but I don't care. I love his music and I'm going to continue. That's no problem. You're welcome to do that. But by the way, both of those things are still true. He's an amazing guitar player. He wrote some very influential music.
Sure.
But he also said some bigoted shit live in a show. Ted Nugent's a great guitar player. Ted Nugent wrote some great songs that you love, but he's also a guy who adopted a 17-year-old so he could fuck her. Let's be honest. Not marry her. He wanted to fuck her. He's a guy who is a draft dodger, but will tell you how much he loves the military and loves all this and my guns, my guns, my guns, and all his other right-wing political bullshit. Kid Rock, you may love his songs, but he is a white trash cosplayer pretending to be something he is not. And he has bigoted views and acts like a child because a trans person touched Bud Light. Both of those are true. You can't separate those, and I don't wish to. But I do understand if you say, I will continue to hear Stranglehold and Wang Dang Sweet Poontang and not ever buy any of his other albums, always shit on him when he mouths off.
Here's my downer of a take on that.
Please.
Because, again, that type of stuff, when it's being listened to, and since a lot of people are very, to certain degrees parasocial with the entertainment they consume, myself included, obviously. Yeah. Otherwise, I would not have been affected by the neurosis thing.
Of course.
I'm not able to separate and in Kid Rock's case, I don't even listen to it. Right? But like somebody that would listen to Kid Rock.
Right.
It instantly, and I don't think this is necessarily incorrect of me doing so, because it kind of makes me feel like, well, the person listening to it is entertaining the whole package.
Chances are, yes. Right? You're in for a penny, you're in for a pound when it comes to Kid Rock.
And if they're not aware of how insulting that is to, and maybe it doesn't affect me in the way that it would, right?
Yeah.
That's something like him being like racist or whatever. Maybe let's use Santana as an example. I'm not a trans person, right? But if somebody were listening to Santana and they were aware of what he had said, but they still kept listening to Santana, it makes me think, well, this person doesn't care about what trans people feel about this whole thing, right? Like, especially now, so like do a little bit of an investigation.
I disagree there. I wouldn't make that judgment about a person.
I do, because ultimately what Santana is saying is, I don't care.
I totally agree. I think what Santana said was ugly. I think it's also, I always find it ironic that somebody who lived through his 60s and wanted peace and love,
Here's also the thing. When a person listens to this type of stuff and they're aware of what the artist has done or said, and they continue to listen to their output, or continue to consume the media, they're also saying, I don't care.
I disagree.
I know. But that's
I don't
okay.
I don't think it's okay what Scott Kelly did to his wife and kids. And when I listen to Neurosis, I'm not condoning that in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
I'm not held accountable for what he did.
You might not be, but a person who maybe went through that is saying, well,
I could understand if they felt that way, but again, if they're going to judge me and they don't know me, well, I can't do anything.
All they're saying is, maybe it's not that they're judging you. It's like in my case, I know to maybe not put as much trust in that person, or not have as close a bond with that person, right? So, and it's just because, like, this is hurtful, not just to me, because Scott Kelly didn't hurt me. I'm not the one.
Yeah, I'm not the victim. No. But
the people that were hurt,
yes,
it was done in a very public manner, right? And this is going to lead to my next point. I do believe that there are roads to redemption.
Sure, I'd like to think so.
But that redemption isn't decided by you or myself.
No,
it's
not
by
at all.
the people primarily affected, right?
Yes.
So
he doesn't owe me an apology.
Right. And he can continue doing music for all I care. Yeah. I also do not believe in the whole cancellation of people. Like, it's kind of impossible because the thing is done. Like you said, Santana already made the music.
Right.
Burzum already exists. So, like, to cancel it it's kind of a dumb thing.
Also,
right?
we've seen it can happen in certain ways, but for the most part, Louis C.K. is a great example of, he still continued to do stand-up. Right. Yes, he lost his show. Yes, he lost a lot of contracts, so on and so forth, but he continued to do stand-up. And he didn't just go away.
Right. He's, exactly. Right?
So he wasn't technically, in the true word of the sense, canceled.
Yeah, I honestly don't think anybody to date has been truly canceled, because they still are able to make money off of
because in the end, you will, if you've reached that I think if you reach that platform,
Yeah.
you will continue to keep a certain core of fans that it won't.
Yes.
That probably don't care one way or the other.
Right.
I don't know why. The one that I always feel like probably got canceled to the highest degree that I can think of. She was some chef on the Cooking Channel.
Oh,
the butter and oil lady.
Yeah, yeah.
And she had her
that
Southern party.
plantation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
know. And that came down. And I mean, she lost everything.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
from what I understand, she has a bit of an online presence. So it's, yes. She's not now working, sanitation or anything like that. Not that that's a bad job. I'm just saying, like, obviously she didn't lose it all.
Right.
But her height to what it is,
Yes.
it's, I think she's the only example I can think of, because you're right. In the end, I mean, Kevin Spacey is still working.
Still working, right?
So
To a weird degree, Kanye West is still
yeah.
putting stuff out.
Yeah,
right.
very much so.
He's still doing the thing.
And again, how much of that is also not as an excuse, but as a thing?
Yeah.
How much of that is also mental problems that this man clearly has?
Of course, I mean,
I think these are, again, I'm not excusing none.
No,
I want to make sure and say that just for all of it, I'm not excusing any of the acts that these people are doing, but part of the redemption, as you're speaking of, is also understanding where some of this can also come from.
Of course, yes.
And I would like to think that I think most people do want to see that. You know what I mean?
Well, one thing that I know I've mentioned to
Mm-hmm.
you and just our own conversations off of this is, especially this country
Mm-hmm.
is a big fan of the comeback.
Well, yeah, yes, we build you up, we tear you down, and then
We let you try to come back, right?
Right.
So, that being said, if the Scott Kellys of the world,
Yes.
If they were going to make a triumphant return to music,
Mm-hmm.
they would have to be given the green light again from the people directly affected by this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, again, yes and no, right? Like, logically, he could make music now. He can do whatever the fuck he wants.
course,
There's nothing we
of
can
course.
stop. What you hope is that he gets things that are more important in line before he
Right.
decides about
Before he
music.
decides, 100%.
That whatever it takes to reconcile whatever it is he did with his family,
Yep.
and that's up to his family,
Yep.
that should be his number one priority, and getting his help, those should be the number one priority. Don't worry about your next album. You need
Right,
to worry
right.
about your life and get that shit together
Yes,
first.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I think I hold that to be true of everybody that I've ever listened to that I no longer listen to. I honestly don't know, because even like the people that are racist, I will condemn them while they are doing the thing
Sure.
that is insulting and offensive and all that shit, right?
Right.
But if one day they're like, you know what, I was wrong, I was wrong. And
You hope, right? Yeah, it would be, wow, wouldn't that be wonderful if that happened?
of course, you know,
know?
and
Although I think
I
when you're
don't
steeped
hold
in that
out
kind
for
of
that.
ideology, it's,
of course, it's kind of like you take that one to the grave.
yeah.
But I don't like hold out. I don't like hope upon hopes that like, oh, I fucking hope this
I
guy
feel
comes
you.
back to.
But if
to
it
his
happens,
senses.
you will also be one who says, I'm glad to hear that happen.
I'm 100%
Okay.
glad. I don't know
I
that.
feel the same, yeah.
I don't know that it's ever actually happened.
I can't.
Especially with people that, well, you know what? That's not true. I'm going to give an example. This one's a little kind of a weird one, but Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees used to wear swastika armbands.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
In her explanation of this, it was because she knew how offensive it was
Yes.
to the older generation.
Yes.
Which a lot of punks did.
I was going to say, right? Especially England, you got, which is weird because you go, wow, if anybody would hate Nazis, it'd be the country that was getting the shit blown out of it for
right.
years on
I
the
mean,
Blitzkrieg.
And to be fair, a lot of American punks at that time
Yes.
also did.
Also doing the
right?
same thing. Yes.
There is famously a picture of one time Misfits drummer Joey Image wearing a swastika shirt. Right. But Susie Sue came to her senses. She stopped wearing, obviously, that armband. She recognized how offensive it was.
Right.
And, you know,
Yeah.
to some extent, she even apologized for
Yeah.
it, right?
I think it goes into the, like I was saying with the Steve Albini and the Rape Man. You're in a point in your life where you're not understanding how that's hurting others. You think you're pushing against and you're being transgressive in a way that says you won't tell me what to do. But in the meantime, these things are hurting certain individuals, probably people that you love and care about. Also.
And that's what you just said it. if you're aware of it hurting others, but you still don't care,
Yeah.
I think that's as insulting as the transgression itself. Because, again, ultimately, it's telling the person close to you, like, well, if this song was made by a person who assaulted somebody in whatever degree, not that you're necessarily signing off on that, but you're okay with that. And you're telling me that you're okay with that because you keep listening to it, you keep enjoying that output, I know that's different for everybody. I don't expect everybody to agree with that. It's taken me a long time to come to this position myself, because in the past I have kind of dismissed things of this nature just so that I could keep enjoying the music or the movie or whatever, But I have to realize, like, at some point, these people mean a lot more to me than the thing, And again, because there's so much more music nowadays, there are so many more movies. I can easily, even though it might have been as influential as it might have been, I can definitely say, okay, well, that actual thing is not a part of my life anymore, because this is my bottom line, right?
Right.
And I would hope that people who are considerate of me, my feelings, and all this. And I know this is kind of a weird subject for people into like metal to talk about, But we also, this scene as a whole tends to pride itself on how together it is, on how accepting it is, So let's see how true that is, Let's see how true that is.
Well, again, it's also part of it. It's tough because look, these things make connections with us. When you're into music that is, underground or is of a, isn't mainstream, there seems to be a better connection. You feel like it's a part of you, that it's your little band in your little pocket.
Sure.
So when these things happen and you suddenly have to make a decision, do I continue or do I say from here on out we're done? That's not an easy decision to make because of how much it means to you. I do understand that. And I think that's why like I say, I think it's up to the individual, because I can't pretend that these things don't mean something to me when it's easy to go, a band that I don't care about, to go, oh, who cares? Why can't you just stop listening? So in that sense, like, I understand why it can be difficult for people, and I understand why. I guess the thing though that I'm thinking is also like, well, how far do we go with this? So do I never ever watch a movie that was produced by Harvey Weinstein?
Well, I'm glad that you said this. So, because Harvey Weinstein is being held accountable.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's another big thing that I wanted.
Okay.
With the road to redemption, there needs to be accountability.
No doubt.
Right? So if the person is still around and able to be held accountable, let's do it.
I got you.
To whatever degree means, let's do it. If it's something that affected, like in Weinstein's case, it affected all these women,
very much
all these careers.
Yes.
And one of the main ways we can do it is through legal recourses.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Right?
I'm with you 100%.
And if he has the means to pay back these women, and I know this isn't going to take away the incident.
No. But justice is, look, this is our justice system. This is how it works in this way. Then that's what I want. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
same with Cosby, same with any of these things when it comes to that sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. So, let's start that process.
Yeah.
Right. But because there were other people involved in these projects. Right. And ultimately, Weinstein was the funding, right? He got all the funding.
Well, he was the mover and the shaker. I mean, look, he put these things together. He made these things happen in a lot of ways. Sure. I mean, his brother is more of the quiet money guy behind the scenes who also knew what his brother was fucking doing.
Exactly.
But Harvey, it was the face. He was the mover and the shaker. He was the decider.
What I'm trying to say is, like, these movies, he had none of the artistic input in. He's the one that made them happen to a certain degree, but the directors and the writers made them happen. And because they were so also affected, not directly like the women affected, I think there's a bit of a separation there, where he's not the one in the movie saying, for example, I want to use Kevin Smith movies because he worked on a lot of Kevin Smith movies, right? He's not the one saying snoochie boochies on camera.
No.
Right? It's ultimately the actor J. Muse through Kevin Smith's words. And yes, it's being funded by Weinstein money, but again, that there's still a level of separation there, and the accountability we're trying to hold Harvey Weinstein up to is separate from Kevin Smith, because we're not going after Kevin Smith.
No,
we're not
not at
going
all.
after Jason
No,
Mewes, right?
no,
We're not going after the other actors in the movies.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's like I said, I still enjoy The Usual Suspects. I still enjoy Seven, and Kevin Spacey is a piece of shit for a lot of reasons.
Like
you know?
I can't pretend that I don't like Seven. I do. It's a great movie.
I watch
right?
it every time I see it on my cable.
But that is one that I have stopped watching.
Okay.
You know, like I have stopped watching. I have stopped. And here's one that I know a lot of people like to bring up: Roman Polanski.
Yeah.
Right. Made Rosemary's Baby, Famous Vampire Killers. What is it? The Ninth Gate. Cool movies.
Yeah.
Right? A bunch of other stuff as well, but those are the ones that I used to like a lot. What he did was horrible.
Absolutely.
But and maybe you can correct me if you know different, but the person who was directly affected also said, "Hey, I've moved on,
Yes.
so you can move on."
I believe in the last
Right.
10 or 5 to 10 years, I believe she has, and even I hesitate, I believe the article that I read was something to the effect of moving on. It seemed to me was more about, I want this to go away because I don't
Right.
want this to be about my life.
Yes.
Not about, hey, I'm over it. It's no big deal. And that's sad because she never got her justice.
She never got a justice.
You know, when you hear things like he's up for an Academy Award and his agents have the balls to call, hey, you think you can show up for the Academy Awards? You know, the one time I'll give the LAPD a good attaboy was when they told him, yeah, no problem. And as soon as he lands, we're going to arrest his ass.
Yeah.
You know, and Hollywood continues to do it. I mean, our last Best Actor won his last Best Actor for being in The Pianist, which was a Roman Polanski movie.
Right.
That
Exactly.
actors
Yes.
line up around the block to still be a
To
part of.
still be a part of it. Right.
And again, no justice in that.
No.
Everybody knows he did it,
Yep.
and yet Hollywood continues to turn a blind eye. And I don't. And then
Right.
then you see the parts where there was famously, I think it was Elia Kazan, got a Lifetime Achievement Award. Well, he named names.
Yeah.
The majority of the people standing in that Oscar stood, but there were a handful that said, "Oh, absolutely not, you son of a bitch."
Right.
You know, I look back at Michael Moore when he gave his speech about Fahrenheit 9/11 and got booed. Boy, we look back at that now and go, I think Michael might have had a few points there. You know, but yes, it is weird the things that we allow. There's even women that were taken advantage of by Harvey Weinstein because they knew this is how they could get in his picture.
Sure.
And I use this word, I know it's not maybe not the part. They willingly did it because they knew they could get the picture. They were not willing partners. They did not want this.
No, and I think
but they
that's-
were willing to do it because they wanted the part. They knew this is how you could get it. And that's sad. And the fact that people don't stand up more for that, Rose McGowan being one of them.
Yeah.
More people should have rallied around her, but they knew if they messed with Harvey, their career would go downtown.
Sure. But I think also that's the part where that power dynamic comes into play.
Oh, no
right?
doubt. Again, I'm not blaming the women. I'm saying some women have admitted they went to his place knowing full well what was going to happen.
Oh, sure.
Because they were told, this is it. This is how you're going to get the part if you want the part.
Yeah,
And they saw and that's sad. It's really shitty that one man should have that kind of power, that
course.
women are willing to do that, sadly, because that's horrible. That's
With
and then not held accountable. The people just go, well, yeah, hey, that's how you get a role. No, fuck that. That's not how you get a role.
I know this was said when the Weinstein stuff was going down and when the Me Too movement started up about the Hollywood casting couch, right? How that was a thing that people
back in
knew
the day,
about,
for sure. Yeah.
You know, I mean, even up
Well,
to
yes,
recently, right?
but I'm saying it was,
and it was just like, oh yeah, we know about that. Like it's a thing.
It's what you
right?
do.
It's what you do, exactly. So I think going back to the Polanski thing, one of the reasons that I still don't particularly watch the movies is because you kind of touched on it. There's no accountability there.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely not.
There was no. Not that I necessarily need punishment.
No,
but there needs to be recognition of what you've done, and
I
you
agree.
need to atone for it.
Yeah, and stop
Right.
pretending again. And I think it's something I was saying earlier. Both can be true. Rosemary's Baby is a highly influential film. He is a great director. He is also the rape of a rapist of a 14-year-old girl that he drugged so that he could rape.
I think
Both
but
of those are true. You
I also-
can't separate those from him.
No, but I think the recognition of him being a good director and not the other stuff as much does it a little injustice.
Oh,
you know?
yeah,
because if you're gonna keep applauding the art, but at the same time chastising or castigating the artist with the same applause, like, you know, we have to recognize now, at this point now where we are in society with culture and everything, we all know about Roman Polanski and what he's done.
Yeah.
Right? The art here needs to take a back seat.
Well, yeah, no,
Right.
I guess what I'm saying is what I don't want is Hollywood wants to tell the story of Roman Polanski as the director only. Nope.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah,
don't get
yeah.
to. It's no different than, weirdly, a person who really changed his whole with one thing. If you think about O.J. Simpson,
Yeah. Yep.
right? When you look up O.J. Simpson, it has nothing to do with what a great football player he was, which he was. Has nothing to do with his acting career, his Hertz rent-a-cars, or anything. The first thing everybody thinks about, whether you think he did it or not, is the murder of his wife and Ron Goldman.
Yeah.
And which you definitely can't take away. If you don't believe he killed, that's fine. I'm not going to get into that. But he definitely beat the shit out of her.
Yeah.
You cannot take those things away from him.
Yeah.
Both can be true. You can watch him play the Bills, win the Bills, and go, "Wow, we never saw a running back like that." But you can't tell his story and omit the parts you don't want to talk about, because both of those things are true. Because humans are very complex, and and there are lots of black and white, gray areas in all of us. Chuck Berry, no doubt, wrote some amazing rock and roll songs that changed rock and roll forever. He also slept with underage girls and then was putting video cameras in his restaurant to videotape women urinating.
Right.
Both of those are heinous and do not in any way get forgiven because he wrote great songs.
Right.
No, absolutely
Right.
not.
And like with these people, like you mentioned, Chuck Berry, O.J. Simpson, a couple of more from the past.
I mean, where does it? I mean, where you go, the guy from the Mamas and the Papas getting his daughter addicted to heroin and then ended up having sex with her.
Yeah. So like these people,
I mean, that's some scummy shit.
one of the things that like I don't believe in, again, and I said this earlier, I don't believe in cancellation, right? But one thing I do believe in is making it more difficult for the person to profit in the same manner that they've been profiting.
Oh, yeah.
So because these people, they're not around anymore, so they can't be held accountable.
Yeah, at this point,
right?
yes.
At this point, which is also why when I talk about like, kind of questionable art, Richard Wagner is one of the greatest composers,
No doubt.
right?
Highly influential to modern
Highly
classical music.
influential, yes. To this day, the Hollywood, the soundtracks played at Hollywood
There
movies
you go.
are made in tone to Wagner's.
I believe John Williams has said that's his
John
favorite
Williams.
composer.
Yes, exactly. So
Yes.
he's a through and through anti-Semite.
Huge. Hitler's favorite guy.
However, Richard Wagner is by this point a few hundred years dead, right? I mean, I don't fucking. I
Not
don't-
good with math, but I think
Yeah.
you're onto something. Yes.
Yeah, right. He's been dead for a while.
We definitely know he's not alive right now.
Yeah. So the fact that he's not there for us to be like,
I hear you.
okay, dude, you have to answer for all this dumb shit you did.
Yeah.
And the music can be also now enjoyed, and frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it can be profited by people of Semitic descent.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, it's been used to train musicians through and through, like through the world.
No
you know.
doubt.
So if it becomes something that the world gets to enjoy, and the person does not get to profit, I'm okay with that.
I got you.
I'm 100% okay with
Okay.
that, right? So with somebody who's around now, again, let's hold them accountable
Yes.
to whatever degree that might be.
Yes.
And if some of that accountability means you can't make the money that you used to make, I'm 100% okay with that. I'm not saying like let's take away their bank account.
No,
and all
no,
this
I know
shit.
exactly what you're saying.
But
Like, yeah, sorry,
you don't
Louis,
get
you don't
that-
get a movie. You don't get a
the
television
movie.
show anymore. Yeah.
You don't get the platform where you
absolutely.
can say your dumb shit.
Now, if you can afford to spend money to make your own podcast and make your own theater and you can perform, well, you have that right. But also, I have the right to stand outside that theater and protest it
100%.
and remind everybody of what you did.
Yes.
I don't have a problem with that at all. I mean, again, this is the free speech part of it all. I'm with that 100. And I think again, like I said, that's why I say I may be able to separate it while listening to an album. I may be able to separate it while I'm listening or watching a movie, but it will never be separated from the person. It can't be, because you have to take the person in totality. This person may have affected your life in a positive way, but this person also did some very horrible things to some people.
One thing, another guy that I'll bring up, Glenn Danzig, right? Mm-hmm. I know you and I, this is another one of our musical loves that we bonded over.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
For those not aware, he recently used a black sun symbol, which at this point I'm not going to get into the full argument here. You can hit me up on social media if you want to argue that. But it was a symbol associated with Nazis during World War II.
For sure.
Right? Now, for me, that's my bottom line. That's one of my bottom lines.
For sure.
Right? So for me, that means no more Danzig.
Okay.
No more Danzig. Because, I can't keep, as much as he might have meant, and this is a person who, ever since I was in junior high.
Right.
Right?
Same. Yeah.
Junior high to up until this year. Right? Mm-hmm. I was going to see him. My wife and I made a point of going to as many shows as possible. Collector of all his music, T-shirts, blah, blah, blah. I have bands that were influenced by his older band, The Misfits. So that one was a kind of I'm not going to say a shocker, but it was a big hit.
It hurt. It hurt a lot.
Right?
You feel let down. You feel, I hate to say it, but betrayed.
Betrayed. 100%, yes.
I don't really know Glenn Danzig. He didn't do anything to me personally.
Right.
But because of the relationship that we have with these artists, I feel betrayed. I feel especially because whether you did it because you're an absolute Nazi or whether you did it because you're trying to be an edgelord, it's still a shitty fucking thing to do one way or the other. And more importantly, you know what you did. Don't pretend you didn't know.
Yep.
You fucking knew. And if this is, I'm almost, I almost don't want to say this, but I think I'd almost be more offended if this was edgelord shit than if it was just like, nope, these are my political and ideological views. At least then I could just go, good, you're a piece of shit, walk away.
Well,
but the idea that you're just trying to be at 60-something years old.
69, yeah.
This fucking 14-year-old edgelord that wants to say fuck you to people. That's pathetic.
Which is what a lot of people were excusing it as.
Well, and again, I will not excuse it.
Yeah.
I believe, for the most part, that's probably what this is, but that's not an excuse. It's stupid.
He's done this in the past. Right?
It's just ridiculous.
He's done this in the past, and he's famously somebody who has said he doesn't care what people think about him. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Of course, he also wears lifts in his shoes, and he makes sure his hair looks a certain way because he does care what people think.
Stands to be towing pictures.
It's just
and all
like
this,
you do care, but again, you're stuck in this juvenile mind.
Yep.
That thinks being some edgelord or push, like, there's a way to push an envelope. There's a way to be, for lack of a better phrase, an edgelord that doesn't do a thing where you're punching down or you're being offensive in ways that hurt people.
Right.
And like when you have the platform that he does, like you want to look, one of the things that that drew me to him in a lot of ways was his take on of religion. The way he would speak of it, the way he would speak of whether it be the ideology, whether it be the religious, like just the church. You know what I mean? I appreciated that. That, in a lot of ways, certainly in the early days, was a very like controversial thing to do. You were putting your neck out there. This is just, you're a fucking moron.
Because again, when I said the thing about like you're telling people that you don't mind this out there. So when somebody sees it, and they enjoy it still to the same effect as they did before, knowing that there is some sort of transgression, they are then telling those around them that they also don't care. So the symbol here in this case particularly, it was on a T-shirt and a poster. Now he signed the poster.
Right.
and the T-shirt was a limited run. But if a kid, if a kid wears that shirt
Right.
and they go to a punk show, and maybe
Sure.
that kid's not aware of what that symbol
Absolutely.
means.
It's very possible.
They go to a punk show and there's a bunch of punks that do know what that symbol means. That kid's in trouble, right?
Well,
that kid's gonna get.
Or he finds another group that thinks, hey, look at
Bam.
you. You're one of us.
You're one of us, which is also what started happening, right? So, again, your intent originally as the artist should be considered here because, again, the symbol is so controversial. It's an insulting symbol at this point.
Yeah. It's, again, unnecessary.
Unnecessary.
With anything that your catalog has ever put out.
100%.
So why do it? Except to just say, fuck you, I'll do what I want, and I don't care what you say.
So when people who know what the symbol is buy the shirt and then wear it proudly because they're also saying, fuck you, I don't, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean by, like, when somebody listens to a song made by these questionable characters, while the person listening to the song maybe isn't racist or a transphobic or any of these insulting things, right? What they're telling the people around them is, that's a you problem, because I know that's how I take it, and I know that's how a lot of other people have taken it, and if we're not saying it, it's because we don't want to upset the situation. We don't want to make a big combative argument at the moment, But I know a lot of people have told me, and I feel the same way. We tend to not look at that person the same way, because if you want to consider us in your lives, and we've already expressed that that's insulting, but it keeps being enjoyed, then you don't care ultimately that it's insulting us or it's offensive to us.
So where would you stand then on Slayer? Because they have certainly used Nazi imagery.
Yes.
I do not believe any of them are Nazis.
None of them were Nazis.
But they certainly attracted Nazis.
So
Nazis definitely were, which is, again, this is another weird one to me also because it's like, I understand you see the two blondes, but, and I know that the numbers are dwindling, so you'll accept the Italians now.
Right.
But Tom Araya is in the goddamn band.
Right.
So, but look, my all-time favorite Slayer shirt is the Iron Eagle, where they replace the swastika with the Slayer symbol and the swords that make the pentagram.
Right.
That's clearly Nazi shit.
So
the
this is-
Satanic Wehrmacht is, it's Nazis.
Sure. Yeah.
Now, you rarely see that anymore.
Right.
They definitely have turned away from that.
Yep.
Where I hope that comes in, and again, this even with the Danzig thing, though I highly doubt it will.
Yeah.
And this is where it goes into kind of what you mean with I think with redemption.
Right.
What I hope is maybe that Slayer went, yes, that's transgressive. Yes, that's taking something evil and we're turning it into our thing. Cool. But then looked out at the crowd and went, oh, not everyone's getting that.
But also,
you know what? Fuck that. We're not doing that anymore.
Slayer was a band where we knew of the people in the band.
Sure.
Right? And, well, yes, you're right. We saw the two blonde guys. Jeff Hanneman was not, by any accounts, racist.
Oh, no,
right?
I don't think the
And-
band, I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, just optics alone,
Yeah.
right? You see Lombardo and Araya,
yeah.
right? And you're like, oh, okay, well, those are
Totally-
two
no.
Hispanic Latino guys.
Totally
right?
agree. Totally
And
agree.
then you see Jeff Hanneman, who's at a shit ton of punk shows with a varied audience, right?
Yeah.
Kerry King, the fact that he's an asshole and a half,
Yeah.
right? That you can fit two people's worth of being an asshole into that short person,
No doubt.
right? Maybe he's got views about races. I don't know them.
Yeah,
he hasn't made them aware
Certainly
to
not.
anybody, right?
No.
But as far as I know, I would not call Kerry King a racist.
No,
right?
I've not seen any signs of that. And I also know he and Jeff are very much into history.
Into history. So on
Jeff
that
especially.
on that one, I can put a bit more of a I'm not gonna say separation because that's not ultimately what it is. A buffer,
Well, I mean, I guess this is what I'm saying. This one's a little different because you have to look at the totality of it all.
And that's what
I
I'm
can't
doing,
help
right?
it that Nazis didn't fucking look at the band and just went, "Oh, I see the imagery." I mean, there's literally a documentary on HBO that I remember I watched in high school about fucking these it's like Skinhead USA or whatever.
Yeah.
Half these guys are wearing Slayer shirts.
Of course, yeah.
You know, and you
Because
just
they
go
thought-
like, "Are you idiots even aware?"
See,
like,
and that's the thing where there was a Tolkien
Mm-hmm.
quote where like something to the effect of like racists can't create new things, so they need to take over the things that are created already and kind of destroy it and make it their own,
You're
right?
saying when your heart's full of hate, it makes it harder to create. Interesting. I wonder
like
why that.
say-
I wonder why that is. You know,
Like
when you
Slayer
don't
being one of
intake-
them, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't disagree that Slayer was trying to push buttons because they did it from the beginning with the get up and all this shit, right?
Being Satanists or whatever.
But
Of
then
course,
we
it
have
was all
a band.
about being that.
We have a band like Marduk,
yeah.
right? Who for the longest time wrote albums, entire albums worth of World War II. Supposedly they're fascinated by World War II.
Sure.
But then it turns out that some of their members are actually buying
Right.
neo-Nazi like propaganda.
Fascinated and
and-
on the wrong side of that war.
Yeah, a little too fascinated, right? So it's okay. And on this one, like Marduk, I used to love this
Right.
band, right?
Right.
But when that fence started leaning a little too much to one particular
for sure.
side,
Yeah.
I was like, cool. This makes it way easier for me to say, fuck this shit.
Yeah.
Even though I loved those first couple albums
hear you.
because they're all, one of them. I mean, one of them is about Dracula for fucking God's sake,
on.
right?
Right.
But it's like, okay, Marduk is done in my book.
I hear you.
For me, they're done.
Yeah.
Danzig, done.
Yeah.
Right? Neurosis, donezo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can look back and talk about them and speak about how much I like them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can do that subjectively, right?
Yeah.
But objectively, I am done with them.
I
right?
gotcha.
Because again, I don't want somebody who know. I also, this is the thing, and this isn't like, not that I necessarily care about how people perceive me, but if I'm gonna speak highly against racism and I'm listening to Danzig, well, didn't he put out that Black Sun shit, right? Yeah, he did, and he also put out songs with really fucking questionable lyrics, you know, which again, one of them I used to dismiss because I was so fucking attached, but now, and I guess this comes with age, and I don't know what level of maturity I'm at, but you know, I'm able to say, okay, I was dumb and I'm done. You know, I don't want to be done. I don't want to be associated with this shit because I don't want people around me to think that I'm okay with this because I'm not, you know?
I gotcha.
And until the day comes that which I know it's not going to come because I was a fan of Glenn Danzig.
He's gonna
so
stick
I
his
know-
head in the sand. It's never gonna.
Of course, right? And he surrounds himself with all yes men.
Mm-hmm.
This was all a great idea.
Fuck them. They don't understand.
They don't understand, right?
Come on.
And I know this.
What's
and
the
I know
big
this
deal?
being a fan of him.
Oh, for
right?
sure. Yeah,
Having been a fan of his, I know it's not going to come.
No.
But if it did, and he was able to speak on it and be honest about
Yeah.
it, cool. You got me 100% back.
Well, I think
right?
that's where I'm like, okay, let's say he does it because he wants to be this edgelord and on, which was ultimately what I believe.
Sure.
But when I look out in the crowd or I start hearing the nibblings online, that's when I grab the mic and go, hey, fuck no.
Right.
Not happening, pal. You know, I think of like the anal cunt guy. You know,
Right.
Nazis started coming to his thing. Now, again, I don't know enough about him. I don't know that he was a racist. I mean, geez, didn't even have a song making fun of Hitler. And
I mean,
again,
he
those
has songs making fun of everybody.
but
Yeah, yeah.
but it's just to say, I mean, he's literally making fun of your fucking God, you idiots, and you still showed up. But I think it's incumbent on him, if he does not want to be associated with those people, to say, fuck you. You don't represent my music. I am not with you. I do not like your views. I am not in any way part of this. I can't stop you from coming, ultimately. I mean, I guess you could in some ways, but I can't stop you from buying the record. I can't stop you from doing this, although some of it you could by maybe not putting out certain messages.
There you
But
go.
it is to
Because-
say, it's like those two things kind of are how you put your art out sometimes,
Yep.
how someone's going to interpret that. I don't have control. Now, some stuff is pretty blatant.
Right.
Other stuff, interestingly enough, just watching one, you and I have kind of talked about this. I was just watching it. Ian MacKaye talking about guilty of being white.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you read those lyrics in a today's view, that song would not fly.
Which, funny you said that, because when Slayer
Yes.
covered it,
Yes.
they changed it to Guilty of Being Right.
At the very end saying
and it
that,
was
which is
sung by Tom Araya.
Exactly.
And it pissed Ian MacKaye off.
And it
So,
should.
you know,
And it should. But again, I watched interviews with him recently where he was talking about that. And I hear what he's saying. I also am not going to hold Ian MacKaye at 19 years old accountable for something that is now 40 years on, which is to say, I would like to question him about it.
Sure.
And I have heard him talk on it. I think if the Ian MacKaye now, if you told him, do you understand how that is taken or how that could be taken, he would totally understand.
100%.
But he
100%.
also knows when I wrote that song, I was trying to write an anti-racist song. You know, as he said in the interview I saw, I was the minority in my school.
Right.
And I felt I was being judged by the color of my skin.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to write. How am I supposed to know if 40 years later some guy in Poland's going to come up to me and say, hey, thanks for standing up for the white race?
Yes.
I totally agree with that.
Of course.
But it's not a stretch to read those lyrics and understand why that could look horrible. Like I said, if you release that today, 19 or not, no way. People would never stand for that song.
Right.
Now,
Right.
the other part is, you're right, because we're living in different times. We have progressed in a way that says, no, you need to be more aware. And I imagine he is also. Same way that Steve Albini was saying.
Yeah.
I am now much more aware of what women go through. That's why rape man is not a good, okay thing, and I should be held accountable. He understands that it is not you being blamed, but you have enjoyed the privileges of being white. And that's what people are upset about.
You touched on something that I actually agree with, where it's not incumbent on me to stop feeling the particular way that I do. It's on the artist, especially after they are aware of the impact it's had, both negative and positive. Right?
I would just think you'd want to do it just to make sure that your art was understood. I understand if you write stuff and people can interpret it and they take it different ways. But when they're taking it in a way like the other part is like, so is J.D. Salinger going to be held accountable because somebody used his book to murder somebody? Like,
Right,
no, we
right.
would never say that.
Exactly.
But you know what I mean? But at the same time, you know, maybe we should watch who, I don't know, maybe we should watch who gets that book. Maybe the government does. I don't know. You know what I mean?
At this point.
It's just, you know what I mean? But, you know, again, this is where I think the gray area, it's like J.D. Salinger should not be held accountable for anyone using his book as supposedly their, I say in air quotes, motive to kill anybody. But fuck you. If you're reading the Turner Diaries, fuck you.
Because the intent is also pretty blatant.
Fuck yeah, it is.
Right?
I understand he's protected by free speech. I have no problem with that. But if you got the guy who wrote the Turner Diaries drunk, or you've got him in a room where he knew he'd be safe, you know that motherfucker was not writing fiction. He was writing an instruction manual.
Sure.
J.D. Salinger was writing fiction. How that affected somebody. I want to live in a world where Ice-T can write cop killer and not be held accountable because some guy goes out and kills a cop.
100%.
You know?
100%.
But I can also understand why somebody might hear cop killer and then go, oh my God, that's exactly what I've been thinking about doing.
100%.
But that's not Ice-T's fault.
Nope.
He didn't make that happen. You know,
That's the intent and the impact.
absolutely.
Part of all this, right?
And I imagine, I could be wrong. I remember when this happened, but I don't remember all the specifics. Yeah. I would imagine Ice-T would have come out when it did happen and go, because there was a guy who did kill a cop or shot at a cop and said, that Ice-T would have come out and been like, that's on him. I'm not shooting cops.
Yep.
I don't want to go out and hurt cops.
And again, because of the ease of access to these people, and because one way or another, they're going to be looked at as being a part of the situation.
Sure.
Whether they're held accountable or not. And I don't mean like accountable, like
I know
it's
what you
your
mean.
fault.
No, I know what you mean.
But if they come out like Ice-T in this
Yes.
case, he says, I'm not a part of that.
Right.
That's not what I was
I
intending.
wrote a song.
I wrote a song. This is a not only is it hypothetical, but this is a made-up character and a made-up cop, right?
But taken from real feelings that
course.
African Americans do have towards policing in this country.
Yep. So there's still that buffer, that
I
creative buffer.
Totally
right?
agree. Totally.
So when, you know, and again, if Ice-T were performing the song and then saying, hey, all of you here should go do bad things to these people.
100.
Then
Yes.
that buffer disappears.
That absolutely
right?
disappears. I couldn't agree with
So
you more.
that's why I don't separate it, right? That's why for me, the art is still 100% tied to the artist because we are in the times that we're in now. because we have all that ease of access of information. We have access to these people, what they think because of Twitter, what they do because of Instagram, right?
Sure. If you can share a meal, you can share your opinion about a song that's you think is being wrongly interpreted.
Yes, exactly, right? And
I think I don't understand why they don't feel.
Right.
Some,
right.
not all. Why you wouldn't want to. Again, I am a white guy with a shaved head. Has nothing to do with any political leanings or anything like that. It's called laziness. I don't want to comb my hair. I shaved it when I started wrestling in high school, and it was easier. Took 15 minutes off my morning. It's fantastic. Been doing it ever since. But there are choices I made. My first pair of Doc Martens I ever bought was like probably 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to walk down the street representing anything that I'm not, ultimately. You know, and I think with an artist, it's the same thing. If Danzig's intent or anyone's intent was never to do this, why wouldn't you want to be upfront about that when you are clearly seeing people are mistaking it for something you never intended?
Exactly.
I would be outraged to think for a second that somebody would think that I am a certain thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, it's not the most egregious, especially if you really are a racist.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just to say, you know, that part I just don't understand is to say, you know, how, you know, and again, it seems to be different for different people, different ways of doing it.
It's always going to be different levels.
And how, like, I think I'm just reminded of, look at Agalloch.
Yeah.
Comes out that, I mean, there were other things going on in the band, but ultimately it breaks up because the lead singer had said some egregious stuff about Jewish people.
Comments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, the band, and I think all of them felt the same, except for the drummer, who was Jewish.
Yeah.
Much of what he said, I probably is true, is someone who thought they had a cultural pass, not someone that was necessarily anti-Semitic.
Right.
Took it too far. The band went, no more of this. We can't do it.
Yeah.
And 3 years later, they reunite, X the drummer, and now they're touring again.
Right.
Now, I don't hold them, and as far as I know, the singer has come out. That was fucking wrong. I'm an idiot. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, good. There's the redemption. There's the realizing I made a mistake.
Well, there's the accountability.
Accountability.
Right.
There's the realizing I was wrong, and I am saying I'm wrong. And if the band wants to get back together again, go ahead. Go see the band if you'd like to go see the band. Go do your thing. You know, I want to believe that's exactly how it went down. Who knows? Maybe some of it was also there. I don't want to be cynical. Could have been money too. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look, I want to leave that outside. I want to take people at their face value. And I hope that's because, again, to your point, I hope that's the redemption. I hope he did. I hope he woke up and went, wow, my stupid statements just took away everything that I care about and everything I love. Because I didn't think about the feelings of other people because I believed, well, they're just jokes. Maybe, but maybe some people don't see it as a joke. So maybe you need to think about that.
It's a good thing you said that as a joke. Anal cunt was supposed to be a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the joke? When it's continuously, as we had said, punching down, right?
Yes.
When everything is making fun of the people that are not like you, what's the joke exactly?
You start to say, and again, because it becomes the repeated joke, even if the subject is different, you start to say, I'm getting the feeling that this isn't a joke anymore.
Right.
I do understand that. You know, I think that, and again, reactions can be different depending on who you are.
Of course.
When I hear that, I go, wow, that's really fucked up and that's shitty. Now, I'm not a fan of the band. I've never owned anything by them. Yeah. It's not really my genre.
Sure.
But I remember that grindcore documentary and they talked about him, obviously.
Yeah.
It was very interesting in so many ways. You had guys that were literally in the same band who played with them. One guy going like, "Oh yeah, Seth was cool. I always liked the guy. He was always fun to hang out with." And the other guy like, "Yeah, I fucking hated him. He was a piece of shit. I couldn't stand that guy. I didn't want to be around him at all." I remember Ethan from Primitive Man getting a bit of shit because he was like, "Good, I'm glad he's dead. Fuck him."
Right.
And people are like, "Whoa, dude!" And don't get me wrong, it is a shocking thing to say in general. But then I'm reminded, well, Ethan's also a person of color.
Right.
I'm not affected by AC songs the way he may be affected by AC songs. And as somebody in that environment, in that scene, he may also feel like, no, fuck you, man. You don't get to usurp my scene with your fucking Nazi shit that comes in here and takes it over. There was another band in that documentary, they talked about it. They played a night with AC and a bunch of Nazi dudes showed up. And they were like, oh, no, they don't. Fuck them. And they were talking shit to him on the stage and eventually got into a fight with him.
Was this
out on the
Drop
floor.
Dead?
I don't remember. I'm sorry. I saw that so long ago. And many of those bands, are bands I'm not, again, it's a
Okay.
genre I'm not that familiar with.
Yeah.
You know, Discordian Access and Brutal
Yeah, yeah.
Truth, bands like that I know, but this was a more of a minor band. But it was just to say, here's this weird dichotomy of this genre and all these different bands existing in it doing very different things, but unfortunately sometimes having to come together. And everyone's going to have a different view on this. Like, I don't doubt the guy who goes, hey, man, Seth was always cool to me, and he was a good guy, and he was my friend. He probably was. But I also don't doubt the guy who goes, he's a fucking asshole who would come into my fucking apartment and tear the place apart
Which I think
and be
is
a
also,
fucking dickhead.
I think how a lot of people, especially people that are musicians themselves,
Mm-hmm.
tend to dismiss, the transgression. Oh, he's cool with me. I mean, because how many times have we?
Well,
heard
that and then that
how-
and
right? That-
yeah, that's
that guy was
never
cool with me.
Yes, that the idea that he was cool with me doesn't take away his actions in other places.
Right.
If I may, Hitler was great with dogs. It doesn't fucking matter. You know, I'm sure if you interviewed his German shepherds, they'd tell you he's a hell of a dude, great treats. But if you told him what he did, they go, I'm sorry, who?
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't mean the other parts don't matter just because there's this one part where he's really nice.
Right.
You know, John Lennon, for all of his peace and all of his love, all of which I believe he believed, he still beat the shit out of his wife.
Right. Right.
Okay? Those two exist in the same plane. I'm sorry, everybody, but they fucking do.
Yeah.
And it's weird to watch people want to separate those two as if they had any
Stake in it.
right.
Yeah.
Like, look, if you want to say Danzig is a racist and you want to point at these things, I'm not going to argue with you. That's fine. I get it. If you take that as that was he is, well, who might argue? You're showing me evidence, and while I may be a fan and his music may have affected me in a wonderful way, brought me closer to people like you and David and others who, you know what I mean. But that's not my whole life.
Right.
I'm not staking it on Danzig. Like if I lose him, oh my God, what do I have?
Right.
So
right.
I'm not
That's-
going to defend it. It's not my job. I
That's
don't
the
need
thing
to
too,
defend
where
him.
I know, and I know it's easy for people to say like, well, it's just music, whatever.
No,
right?
no.
But if it's just music, then it should be easy to
Walk away from
to
it,
walk
and it's
away
not.
from it. Exactly.
I
right?
wonder. Yes.
You know, so-
and again, let's not live in that bullshit world either. Stop pretending art doesn't affect our lives in positive and negative ways, and stick with us. It
because
does.
it's funny that a lot of the folks that do this, and I know I'm going to generalize
Mm-hmm.
here, there are the folks that really are into a particular genre of metal,
Sure.
right, and maybe dress the part,
Yeah.
and it's a part that hasn't been around for a good 30, 40 years at this point,
Mm-hmm.
so. I get it. You wanna look like you're into the thrash or the black metal or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
but you at this point should be aware. I think it will do some good for you to be aware of exactly the type of things that you're involving yourself in, and I know it's tiresome. I know it's tiresome.
It can be, but don't you want to be better informed? If you want to know what's going in your food, why wouldn't you want to know what's going in your ears? Why wouldn't you want to know where my money goes? Now listen, and I always say this, that is the other side. Believe me, you and I are making choices about where our money goes, but there's no doubt right now we have spent money on somebody's art that we don't know probably holds views that we both detest.
Of course, yeah.
And until I find that out, I may still be putting my money onto that person.
I agree. I agree.
And just so that people are aware, like this is happening right now.
Yeah.
Everybody that was into, oh God, we were just talking Inquisition, right? Was it Inquisition?
Yeah.
Everybody that was into Inquisition loved Inquisition.
Yeah.
And then it came out, the man was downloading kiddie porn.
Yeah.
Okay, now you have a choice to make, and I just think that those are those things where you could find out tomorrow. Like weirdly with the Danzig thing, I used to joke all the time about people like, why don't you get like a Danzig skull tattoo, man? And I'd always say, because I know what will happen. The moment he finishes, breaking news, Glenn Danzig molests 12 children, and now I'm stuck with this giant fucking skull on my stomach,
Yeah.
And it's just like, it made it very difficult to do that because again, the attachment we have to these things goes beyond just simply, ooh, that's a nice little tune.
Here's a with like the Danzig, because a lot of that output is singular. It all supposedly comes from him.
Ultimately,
right?
yes.
So okay, if it all comes from him, and so do the rants between songs at his recent concerts, which we've heard ad nauseum at this
Yes.
point. That compared to like Neurosis, where Scott Kelly is one of 5.
I 100%.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you.
So the year that the news broke out about Scott Kelly, I had just gotten my Through Silver and Blood's twin snakes on my chest. Right, and I already have other pieces that are kind of attributed to Neurosis
No doubt.
on tattooed on me. So I became that fucking guy with the Neurosis tattoos who, what's he going to do now? Is he going to scrape them off? Well, no, because, again, and to your point, the things that I liked about the band and what that band was for me wasn't this negativity at those times. And these are more memorials to those times.
And I think, to your point, I'm 100% with you on this. I think that's some of it for me, too, is, in a way, I will not allow Danzig's stupidity and his idiotic rants, the stupid shit he puts on his art, I will not let it take away from the positive things that his music has put into my life.
Yeah.
I won't allow him to do that. Fuck you, man. Because positive things have come out of liking his music.
Sure.
There's no doubt about it. That doesn't, but again, I'm not separating them. I'm just going to say, these good things also came from it, but you as a person, you as what you're doing right now, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Until I hear otherwise, until I need to hear you say, I am so distancing myself from that shit because that's bullshit. I've never stood for that. I will never stand for that. That was a stupid mistake. I need to hear that. If you're not going to say that, then piss off. I don't want to hear from you ever again.
Here's, I think, where we divert from one another. I don't want to have that stuff in my house anymore. You know, because I don't want a person who, even if they're remotely aware of what a Scott Kelly did or of what a Danzig might have done. I don't own Inquisition or Kanye West stuff, you know, but if I had any piece of music that was created by a person who assaulted anybody else or just somebody not good, right? Somebody who's socially not a good person. And you know, we have many ways of confirming that. Again, I don't want them to think, well, you must be okay with them being that way. And I don't know if the person who enters my house is a victim of some sort of abuse or not, or if they're going to be insulted by the racism displayed by one of these people or any of this, you know, because I do want, and I'm not the most optimistic person out there, but I do want to consider people's emotions, their comfort levels around me.
Sure.
I would like for them to trust me, you know, but if that means getting rid of the music that I've owned in the past from these people, so be it, because 100% I'm not. The music doesn't make me.
No, I guess what I would say to that is anybody that would be in my home, anybody that would be around me should know who I am.
Yeah, and I think
so. Therefore, if you see Neurosis albums, you see Danzig albums, but you want to assume that I must be a Nazi who's okay with verbally and physically abusing a woman, well, then you don't know me.
No, but like I said, for me, what that tells me is you also don't care that I'm insulted by this stuff.
No,
right?
that's
you know,
completely.
But that's what I'm saying. That's my opinion.
I got you, but I mean, again, like I said, I don't play Neurosis in the car. Danzig certainly now. I'm not. I wouldn't do that with you in there because again, I want to respect that.
Yeah.
You know, but again, I'm not going to make that decision for you. I don't want people to make that decision for me. And I don't.
I don't think I'm making it.
No, I don't think you are either.
No.
No. And again,
I just know because I've talked to people who, again, I'm like you mentioned earlier on. I am Mexican. So
wait, what?
A lot of these, I know, surprised, right? If it wasn't the salsa conversations we've had, that gave it away.
That's why we eat all that spicy food.
Yeah. That's where those tacos come from. You know, I've had conversations with other people where maybe they can't vocalize their feelings to this extent, and some people also would rather not bother vocalizing their feelings because you know they have other stuff to do in their lives. You know, they can't spend it worrying about what their entertainment does or doesn't do, which I understand.
Yeah,
right?
no, it's like not wanting to support certain corporations, and when you look at the spider web, good luck.
Well, that's a great point that you're making.
So much more than stuff. Do what you want to do, but understand it's going to be difficult. if you don't.
Yeah, because so much stuff gets commodified
Absolutely.
to the extent that it is now, right?
I mean, look, my family, we don't shop at Walmart.
Right.
I don't want to support them. I don't like their family. I don't like the way they've destroyed this country, quite frankly, in many ways. But am I supposed to believe that the people at Target are somehow more
Better.
about America?
Right.
But I got to shop somewhere,
Yeah.
you know? So, yes. I mean,
so like I understand
Yeah.
stuff like that, you
Yeah.
know. But with the entertainment, because that's the stuff that I bring into my house.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff that people see. Maybe primarily before they see anything else is, we're at a get together
Mm-hmm.
and we're gonna want some background music. We're gonna want topics of conversation.
sure.
And these topics of conversation will always lead to like, hey, what are you listening to? What are you checking out? Right. For me.
Yeah.
Right. For me.
Always, yeah.
And this is, again, I'm not expecting everybody else to be like this. I know it's difficult for people to let go of the things that they love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it says to me, though.
Right.
You know, and I have stopped going to people's houses and communicating with them, just because of their insistence. Like, well, either don't feel that way or forget about it or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they make every attempt to get me to rationalize or reconcile with them, when I've already said, like, hey man, that's insulting to me because of this, because this is my bottom line. Racism, homophobia, transphobia, any
sure.
of these things,
Yeah.
right? That's my bottom line.
I got you.
And I don't think it's bad for me to hold those
No,
bottom lines, right?
no, not at all.
That's for me why I can't separate art from artists. Ultimately, it's and because I do tend to think of myself as maybe not so much an artist, but a musician.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that if people have a problem with anything I've ever done,
Sure.
they can come up to me and be like, "Hey, do you really feel this way about this?
Sure.
Like,
Oh.
is this you or
Yes.
is this the character?"
I think the last thing that any artist wants to be is misunderstood.
Of course,
Especially
yeah,
if your music or your art has a message.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
last thing you want to be is misunderstood. It's got to be upsetting for certain bands that have had a song or a artwork that somebody's attached to, and what I mean, you see it with, sorry everybody, but I'm going to keep picking on them. But Republicans who keep using songs that they don't seem to understand what the meaning is, and artists go, "Whoa,
Yeah.
no, you're not using that at your rally. Not
Right,
going to
right.
happen, dude."
Yeah.
And it's like,
Well,
how much of that
what's
is
his name?
misunderstanding or just not giving a shit? But
What's the famous Paul Ryan, right, with Rage Against the Machine?
yeah. Talk about
Right.
missing the or how about the Republican Party dancing to the YMCA? Fortunate Son, Born
Yep.
in the USA.
Yep,
I
yep.
mean, the way Republicans attach themselves to certain songs that you're like, wow, you really don't listen to these things, do you? And I
Yeah,
get
you
it.
know.
If I were Bruce Springsteen, well, first I'd kill myself. But secondly, if they were playing, Born in the USA at some fucking right wing rally, yeah, I'd be pissed.
Yeah,
Fuck you. If I'm John Fogerty, fuck you. You don't get Fortunate Son, asshole.
Yeah.
That's not. You're clearly not listening to the lyrics on that song.
Right.
I again, man. I like I said, I think that's some of it. Is I think intent matters, but also if it's starting to be like, if you weren't clear enough that people are taking it in a horrible, shitty way, you need. Why wouldn't you want to?
Right.
Yeah. Hey, not no. Fuck you. You don't. By the way, it's kind of, you say Rage Against the Machine. I remember that's kind of where he started his campaign that goes to these metal shows, where he was going to these Ozfests and metal shows, and these fucking skinheads kept showing up, and he's like, bullshit, you're not taking this away from us.
Right.
You're not going to make it so certain kids can't come to this thing because they're too afraid of you.
Yeah.
Fuck you, man. And
yeah.
good for him. And again, not surprising, as a multiracial person. Obviously, his perspective on these things is much different, and it's, if nothing else, it once again shows how important inclusion is, because you get these different perspectives, so you have a better understanding. Like I said, with Guilty of Being White, there's no doubt 60-something-year-old Ian MacKaye sees that song differently than when he did when he was 19 years old.
Yeah,
if he wrote it now, it would be very different.
I would. I mean, I haven't seen him, but I think also he's a person that's done so much for.
Oh yeah,
kind
no.
of inclusivity.
His track
and,
record
right?
is, yes, it's beyond reproach in that way, where you go like, nobody is actually thinking. It's now that we go back and look at it with our 2025 eyes.
Right.
We say you're missing the point, dude.
Right, right.
We
I
get
also-
what you're saying, but you're missing the point.
I also think, like, for me, I know one that is like held in contention with me is like Led Zeppelin, you know,
oh,
where a couple other people, maybe all of their people, have done some questionable things.
for
right?
sure.
And I don't listen to Led Zeppelin
Okay.
because of this thing. right?
Okay.
Also, I don't enjoy the music, just right. But when people tell me they're one of the greater rock bands, I'm like, okay, I can see why you would think that. I can understand that.
Sure.
But also, they were shitty people, right?
They did
Right?
some really shitty things,
You know-
which is funny. Like that, I'm glad you brought that up because that was something that hit me. Was the famous mud shark story they would always tell. You know this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who don't know, they stayed in some hotel, I believe it was in San Francisco, that was literally like on a wharf. You could fish from your room, and a girl they had in their room, they caught a mud shark, and she began to do sexual acts with it. Is what the story goes. Now, of course, this story begins to change throughout. The first time I ever heard it, it wasn't that she was doing sexual acts with the shark. It was they were doing sexual acts to her with the shark. And I think as the times changed and as many of these men got a little older and maybe if you had daughters, they started to realize how that made them look like, what is it? Oh, yeah, rapists.
Right.
So then the story keeps, well, now I wonder if that story gets told at all. There's a new Led Zeppelin documentary I have not yet seen that I definitely would like to.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised to see. Do they mention that story now in 2025? I bet you they don't.
I don't think they do.
I don't think they're going
I mean,
to
I don't
either.
think in that Beatles epic 80-hour
right,
documentary,
no.
they had a couple hours spent on Lennon's,
No.
extracurricular activities.
Not at
right?
all.
So that's what I'm saying. Though.
Yeah.
Like, and with Led Zeppelin, they're the couple that are still around. I think let's sit them down and be like, hey guys, what the fuck? You
I
know?
do know that the Page thing, he has never been taken to task as an individual, nor will he. He's too powerful, and no one's going to sit him down for a one-on-one.
Right.
And again, this is going to sound like justification, and I am not justifying in any way, shape, or form. His big thing is he most likely slept with a lot of underage girls.
Right.
That's, one thing I would say is, again, the power dynamic and the age does not matter. I get that. And I'm with that 100%. It does not matter that these girls, many of them probably did want to sleep with Jimmy Page.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. I don't give a shit. They're 16. They're not an adult. You are.
Yeah.
Having said that, I doubt Jimmy was checking IDs at the door, and neither was his guys.
Of
He
course.
should have. Probably
Of
would have been
course.
smart to do.
Yeah.
And I'd hate to use the phrase, but in some ways, it was a different time. Again,
I mean, yeah,
which doesn't
yeah.
make it acceptable. It means more people were okay with it than people who were able to speak up and
I
say,
also think
no, it's
people
not.
weren't aware of it happening. Right?
Certainly, because this was happening. It's not like he was open about it.
Right. So I think
So, yes, I think it's perfectly okay to now go, hey, Jimmy, what the fuck, bro?
that's my
And,
only
and,
thing.
and say again, this is also part of your Led Zeppelin history.
Yep.
Yes, Kashmir, great riff, but hey, bro, what the fuck?
Yeah. That's my thing with the accountability.
Yeah.
And again, I do think once these people are held to task,
Mm-hmm.
let's open up a road for them to redeem themselves.
Sure.
Whatever that means. Especially if it's like through public scrutiny that they've been accused and
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
then
yeah.
held accountable.
For sure.
Then let's do it publicly. And I don't mean like shaming them publicly.
No.
Like throwing that, like,
Shame.
yeah, like I don't mean anything like that.
Yeah.
But like
Though it would be fun. I got some apples. I could fill her.
I got plenty of tomatoes, some cucumbers. Like let's do this through public outreach.
Yes.
Let's do this through benefits, donations and stuff like that. Something that's gonna benefit people who are hurt by the things you might have done in your past.
Maybe every 10 cents of every dollar goes to rape victims from
I would
every
even
Zeppelin
say more.
album.
I would even say more, especially the way Led Zeppelin.
But you know what I'm
sounds.
saying.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
in general. Yeah. I listen, again, hold him accountable.
Yes.
Hey, look, Jimmy, at this point, you're 70-something years old. You have to know, that was fucking wrong. Because, by the way, you're not bragging about it anymore the way you might have
used to.
in a book.
Right.
So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to? And again, this is the other part with like fans. Like, I'm sorry, both of these are true. You can love Zeppelin and you can love their impact, but he still did these things.
Yeah.
And I don't know why you'd want to defend that.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I
his-
understand if you won't want to necessarily talk about it every time you talk about Led Zeppelin. I get it. You don't have to say, hey, Led Zeppelin 4 is amazing and he raped 16-year-olds.
Yeah.
I get that. But when somebody brings it up, you don't get to go, "Hey, man, come on! No, look, this is part of their
Right.
history, bro.
This is
I don't
part
know
of
what
it."
to tell you.
Yeah,
If we're gonna talk about Ozzy, I love Ozzy. I love all the things he did. He did get drunk and high, and he beat on his wife on more than a few occasions. And I don't say drunk and high to make an excuse, but these are part of why.
That's part of the whole thing.
The whole story.
Yeah.
You know, back to the neurosis thing. Knowing some of what through his blog, what Scott Kelly, his upbringing was, I imagine a lot of his behavior is learned. That is not an excuse for what he did, because he's an 18. Once he turned 18 and became an adult, he could have fixed that. He could have figured out how to not repeat the sins of the father.
Yeah.
But I can't take away from, but I still have to recognize that these are the sins of the father.
Sure.
You know, not because it's an excuse for what he did, but that if we don't look at that, then how do we fix these things? How do we understand and hold him accountable to say when he goes, because believe me, some will use it.
Of
You
course,
know,
of
the
course.
way what's his name, the actor we were talking about from Set.
Spacey?
Yeah, or the way, like, almost, I hesitate to say it, but still, almost more egregious than what he did was the I'm gay when he
Well,
got caught.
you
Where you're
know,
like,
here's-
really?
Here's an argument that I heard regarding Kevin Spacey.
Please.
He plays creeps so well,
Well,
right?
yes.
But
Some
then
of
when
the-
you find out he is just as creepy
Yes.
as the creeps, like, well, is he really acting, or
Well,
is he just reciting?
What do they say? Hiding in plain sight, right?
Hiding in plain
There are
sight,
many
yes.
of these people who do. They hide in plain sight.
Right.
Like, it's not a coincidence that 9 times out of 10, the Republican senator railing against homosexuality
Oh, yes.
gets caught
Yeah.
with his fuckboy in Thailand.
Yeah.
Like, duh, of course, doth protest too much.
Yeah.
You know, but it also shows you what Hollywood would put up with. Yeah, he's an asshole. I mean, you talk to John Brenthal, who did Baby Driver with him. He'll tell you, yeah, Kevin Spacey's a fucking asshole on the set. Yeah, you know. And again, you know, money definitely makes it much harder for corporations
Of course.
to separate art from artists. For sure,
course,
they
yeah.
don't give a shit.
I mean, even with the Led Zeppelin thing,
Yes.
that is a corporation.
No doubt
now,
about
right?
it.
Like,
No doubt.
I mean, but on that, like,
Please.
now I don't know James Hetfield to be a spouse abuser of any kind. I know he abused alcohol.
Yes, he did.
Right.
Which you could say, in some ways, probably had a ill effect on his family. So therefore,
I think so. I think
I can't
to what
imagine it didn't.
Like, to what extent, I don't,
I don't know.
So I'm
It's
not going to comment.
Right, and it's none of my
right?
business.
But I know it affected the band.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But how many? I'm not gonna say of us. How many
Mm-hmm.
fans of Metallica applauded the fact that
Oh.
he announced it, he took accountability for his
Absolutely.
issues, and then say, I'm gonna step away and get help.
Yep.
And then come back to this.
Absolutely, for
The
sure.
road to redemption, right?
A guy whose music I don't listen to anymore, but was always a metal hero of mine.
Sure.
And to see him as an adult face a problem and say, this family, and I don't mean Metallica,
Yeah.
means more to me than anything else. So I'm going to go get recovery
Yep.
because
Yep.
that's what's important. That made me feel like good. A guy I love still is a
He
is a-
cares.
he cares, and he's a
Yeah.
good person. That he cares about he put his family before Metallica.
Sure.
And that's awesome. I'm with you.
That's awesome. Now I know another one that gets thrown in. One of my another one of my beloved musical entertainers, Lemmy from Motorhead.
Yeah.
Right. He famously used the Iron Cross all over Motorhead. World War II memorabilia collector.
Yeah, very much so.
Right. So if anybody saw any of those documentaries in his house and his apartment,
Yeah.
they saw the one room with all of the fucking armbands.
Yes.
Which, holy shit,
Yeah.
right?
And by the way, not just a World War II collector, seemed to be a collector of everything.
Everything. Okay.
Damn near a hoarder.
Okay. Thank you for saying this. Okay. So at no point in my life did I ever see Lemmy sport one of those swastika armbands.
No.
Or any of those swastika flags.
No.
Right?
He wore the SS uniforms a couple times, right? The
He-
hat or the blouse.
It was the stylized
Yes.
kind of right. So it's not that I'm forgiving this or dismissing it because I recognize that it was like yikes, you know.
Yeah.
But Lemmy comes from that whole school of like I'm going to piss people off, right? And because he's not around, I can't hold him accountable, obviously.
Sure,
and I
sure.
know people in the past have tried to say he might have been harboring these types of feelings, but again, that never showed itself.
You certainly didn't.
Right. Like when you look at, and again, because of the ease of information,
Yeah.
the ease of access to the information, we could tell that Lemmy was not a person who,
Seemed like anybody who had a bottle of Jack Daniels and would hang out and have a good time.
Well, Lemmy also was famously renowned as a drug abuser.
Yes.
Up to his dying day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I forget what it was. Speed. Maybe.
Speed. That's what he loved.
So, I don't look at him firstly as a personal like influence on my life, because obviously that would mean I'm gonna be using speed and drinking Jack Daniels 24 hours a day. But secondly, I on that one for some reason I knew where to cut off the influence. Like where to say like, okay, I like the influence, I like the musical shit that you do.
Sure.
I like the tone that you get, but that's where it ends for me. Because again, the World War II fascination, it's on his, for some reason it's easy to move past it.
Okay.
Because he wasn't kind of
Well,
like
no, I don't think in any way
like Jeff Hanneman wasn't.
No. I think they were fans of history. Look, people have always said, let's be honest. If we're being honest, the Nazis, their uniforms looked amazing. They did.
Well, I mean, they had
Karl Lagerfeld or whatever was it?
It was the fashion house.
They're still around. I mean,
Hugo Boss was
Hugo
it?
Boss. I think yes. Yeah, there you go. I mean, look. SS uniforms look fucking cool. That's why the bad guys in Star Wars look as cool
all
as they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They just do. Now they proved looking cool. Obviously, can't win you wars, so it doesn't really
Can't aim a
matter.
gun.
No, it doesn't. Doesn't win you a war, pal. You look good dead. I'll give you that. But But yes, and again, you're talking about also a guy who clearly grew up during World War II, the Blitzkrieg, lived through it. How he is affected by World War II is a different thing.
Yep.
I guess when it comes to his collection, it would definitely be like, well, are you collecting only one side of World War II, Lemmy? Like, because saying you're a World War II collector, I got no problem with that.
I mean,
because here's my U.S. Army one, here's my British Army, But if you're very concentrated on one,
he did at some point. He did say he liked the visual aesthetic of that,
and I have no problem with that. Because intent, who he is, he shows me no signs of anyone who is a racist or a bigot.
Right.
He does not hate based on color. He does not hate based on religion and all that other stuff. I'm sure he hates for other reasons, maybe because you didn't bring speed. But, It's like, no. And I think that's, again, these are the things. Like, that's why I guess what I have said from the beginning. I don't think it's one size fits all every single time. It's looking at the totality of the entire thing. Yeah. And saying, okay, I need to see the evidence of these things, and then go, okay, I've seen enough. I've made this decision. Yeah. But and I just think like, yeah, when you take Lemmy as a whole, you can point at that and go, that's a little dirty. But when I look at the rest of it, I go, well, that's clearly just a thing that he was into, not for any ideology.
Here's one other one that I know I used to enjoy his output in the past, and after several incidents, Phil Anselmo.
Yeah, I still, and I can't lie, I still do. I still like Pantera. I think he is a fucking moron of epic proportions. I think his lead singer syndrome is such that even fucking David Lee Roth is like, bro, enough. I mean, the way this guy talks like he's some fucking like just brilliant speaker, and it's just like, and I say this not to offend anybody who may be, it's just, you're some high school dropout moron who thinks he knows it all, and just because you lead a band, you know what I mean? And look, I like, old Pantera. I'm still a fan, and ironically, I just was giving some to a guy at work that seemed to have heard it for the first time. I like Down. Down is a great example, too, of where I love that first album especially, and I joined their fan club, Brotherhood of the Eternal Sleep, and they sent me the shirt, and it had the fleur-de-lis. One side of it was a pot leaf. The other side was a Confederate flag. Yeah. I've never worn that shirt. It sits in my closet. I'm not fucking wearing that shirt. I'm not walking around with that Confederate flag. It's not going to fucking happen, And he's another one. Yeah. I don't pay attention to him anymore or anything that he does anymore. And, he's a moron.
When he was introduced into our household, it wasn't through me, surprisingly. But one of my brothers was a big Pantera fan. Yeah. And then I remember, actually, it was a concert where I remember seeing all these Confederate flags when they played with Sepultura.
Which is so, like...
Right?
Again, though, there is that... again, not making excuse.
Yeah.
There is a mental disconnect for some people when it comes to that Confederate flag because of the teachings in this country when it comes to the Confederate flag.
Which
It's
in
not-
1992 or 93 when that concert was,
Yes.
I accept.
I hear you. Now, no.
Now,
I
2025.
totally agree.
But as the years progressed, as the internet grew into
Mm-hmm.
what it was, and as people began to kind of murmur like, "Hey, this dude's kind of a racist shithead," and the videos popped out of him speaking out against black culture, you
Yeah.
know. And then there's a short snippet of Dimebag straight using the N-word.
Yeah,
right?
hard R too. It's
Hard
really,
R. And then you have a couple of incidents of Anselmo straight white power / blaming white wine. Again,
Yeah.
my bottom line
I hear
has been crossed, right?
I hear
It's
you.
been met and crossed, and you fucking nosedived way past it. So for me,
yeah.
I can easily say, well, I never liked Pantera.
Yeah.
I used to enjoy Down, used to enjoy Superjoint. Mm-hmm. Maybe listen to Viking Crown and some of his other like black metal-y things. But dude's a piece of shit. So dunzo, right? I'm done. Like,
I think the thing that I still struggle with when it comes to that is just the part of if he is those things
yeah.
and not just some dummy who doesn't understand the power of his words and is speaking about shit that he doesn't really fucking understand.
Yeah.
That rant he gives about rap music and how it's not for white people. Shut the fuck. You're so not understanding. Again, you're a moron speaking on stupid shit.
Yeah.
If what he says is true, that the white power was the white wine, it was a joke they was making in the green room and brought it out to a stage where nobody knows what this joke is,
Right.
and now you look like an idiot walking around doing a Nazi symbol when you, and by the way, you know your fucking history,
Yeah.
then the problem, the only thing I would push back on is I do not believe that person like the guy from Crowbar, Kirk, and Keenan, Pepper Keenan, would be in a band with somebody that they believed was truly a racist. When you listen to their output and you listen to the way they speak, and by the way, there are songs that Pantera has that are clearly speaking against racism.
Of course.
So and again, I also think that we both know this. There are plenty of people who would say, well, I'm not a racist, but they may hold racist views.
Sure.
Or that, much like, again, he said, I keep going back to it, but I thought it was very interesting. When, like he said about Rape Man, where it's like, well, my culture tells me that women are equal and gay is okay and on and on and on, so the fight is over. No, the fight is not over. You don't get to say these things because your bubble tells you this other thing. You know? But I hear you. No, again, I just want to finish saying, piece of shit, absolute asshole. I don't know what he's up to anymore. Don't really give a shit.
Unlike the Anselmo thing, I wouldn't want to judge the people around him for his actions because that wouldn't be fair. So like
Truly.
Kirk Winstein or Pepper Keenan.
Right.
I
Or what's his name from I Hate God, the drummer too. I can't think of it. Jimmy Bauer.
Jimmy Bauer.
Right.
They, I don't know their beliefs. I don't know. I don't know them at all. I don't know Phil Anselmo either. But I know what he said.
I
right?
know. I'm going by their music
And
the music that Crowbar and Corrosion of Conformity and I Hate God put out.
yeah.
There are songs that they put out that are actually that do speak anti-racism.
Right. So because I mentioned before, if you're going to pepper in your personal beliefs while you're delivering the art, then that buffer gets disappeared from me, right?
I gotcha.
And because Phil Anselmo had done this on several incidents.
Oh, yes.
And it's kind of like the fool me once,
Oh,
right?
again,
and then fool me twice.
Believe
and
me,
right?
this is even on lesser stuff. With Danzig, it's like you'd hear him say some stupid shit at a concert, or then he gets punched out, and then he's whining because he's got no soup backstage, and you're just like, well, these are really. And again, this also speaks to something we've talked about in other podcasts, but also here. When I'm younger and I see Glenn Danzig, he's like a superhero. He's like my idol. I want to.
Well, he's the character.
He is.
Right?
He could be. He could do no wrong. Pantera the same. Oh man, there are these gods up on stage. People did the same thing with Zeppelin. They did it with all that
all the time.
And then as you get to know them, and as you get older, and that starts to not be the way you look at them anymore because you realize that's childish. You start to see them as human beings, and then you start to realize how flawed they are, and some worse than others. Yeah. And you have to start saying, well, then that can't be anymore because I choose not to have that in my life. It's
so like with the Anselmo one, and that's the continuous.
That's a pattern.
It is, So at some point, it's like, okay, well. You might keep telling me you're not, but you keep doing the thing.
I agree. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to defend him in any way. I don't need to defend him. I'm not obligated to defend him. Right. He does what he does. And I think a lot of it, 9 times out of 10, is fucking stupid. Yeah. And I think he is so full of himself. And I don't think whether it's just rock star ego that doesn't think that he should be held accountable or think about what he's saying or doing, I don't know. It's just, I've never watched somebody be so stupid for so long and just feel like, wow, you had a platform, bro, and you really fucked it up, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately he did.
He really did.
He was a person who was very influential in a lot of the subgenres of metal and all this, and he was very...
one of the great voices in metal. I mean, his vocal abilities. And again, when he dies, depending on where you read, it's going to have parts in there. If for nothing else, it'll say controversial artist. Yeah. That for sure is going to be attached because you've never come out and gone, whoa, dude, no, not me. I'm not that guy. I've grown since,
It's funny that you mentioned that about people remembering him as controversial because if that happens... I know my stance, not that I'm going to be like, oh, you have to be the fun hater or like raining on these people's parade who are mourning.
Right, no, I got you.
But I will say, did we forget that this dude not only threw out white power, but he Sig Heiled at the show?
Yeah,
It's I was still able to see at that point. Yeah. So I was like, what
there's no mistaking what he
doing,
did.
Right?
Yes.
Is everybody collectively forgetting this, or are we just because he's dead, we're going to sanctify him?
Or we're going to forget it because we want to because he died. But again, his history exists in its full totality.
Right.
You don't get to take away the things that make you feel uncomfortable about this person. Yeah. He is his totality, whether he likes it or not. Yeah. Because in the end, we can kind of control our legacy.
Of course.
But in some ways we can't. If there's certain things that happen, the world will determine it when it's all over.
It's also the things, I don't know that they're like the main principles of art, but there's one of like creation, expression, and communication. Okay. So how creative are you in expressing the idea?
Sure.
What is the idea you're expressing?
Right.
And how are you communicating this idea? Right.
Yeah.
So like, if in the process of, and let's say it's something that's completely, for the sake of this conversation, sane.
Yeah.
Right? It's completely devoid of anything.
No mental problems that are making other things happen.
Right? Yeah. But then as you're delivering the artwork, you say something incredibly shitty and offensive. Well, now the intent of that artwork is stained. And
very much can be, yes.
You have to. I feel like you have to as an artist, especially nowadays. Yeah. Clear the fucking air.
Well, I would think you'd want to,
right?
Even if you don't have to, wouldn't you want to? If your especially if your message is someone. If I'm standing up for instance, let's say I do an art piece that is to stand for trans people. Yeah. Now, I'm not a trans person. Right. There's a good chance I may say or do something that is wrong or offensive. Not because I intend it to be, but because it is. But if a trans person comes up to me and goes, hey, man, that word you keep using, like, we don't use that anymore. This is the way we say it. I'm not going to push back, go, hey, man, didn't I just create this piece of art that's supposed to be helping you?
There you go.
I would take it as thank you. I will not use that word anymore because otherwise it will take away from the overall message I'm trying to put out there.
I think when people keep kind of insisting or holding on to or being insistent of holding on to these past mentalities, that's going to be damaging.
Yeah, why wouldn't you want to grow?
There you go, right? So I know people maybe would have preferred it in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s, whatever decade of your choosing, right? But there's so much shit out there now. There's so much stuff out there that we can consume that's not being made by these shitty people.
Right,
And if it's
agreed,
and if
agreed.
it's the original art, how many times? And now I'm gonna say this:
Mm-hmm.
I don't know these people's politics. I don't know their stances on anything. But if you want Led Zeppelin, you have Greta Van Fleet, right? You have the Darkness or Wolf Mother or whatever.
Well,
the
I
fuck,
mean,
right?
their influence musically is so ubiquitous. It's in everything we listen to. Let's be
Right,
completely
yeah,
honest.
right. So, but it's like,
well, it's
there
also
are
in what
the
they
things.
stole, but you know,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
get into that
exactly.
later.
Yeah, right. So this is
What
whole,
they-
that's a whole other episode.
Right. What
Aaron.
they created, he says in air quotes.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Willie
You know,
Dixon has something to say.
totally. Yeah. So
Again, this is what makes it difficult. As we stated at the beginning,
yeah,
our attachment to art, our attachment, whatever that may be, painting, whether it be music, whether it be a film. When you get into these things and you allow it to affect your life,
yeah,
it makes it more difficult when you start to learn. Sometimes I don't want to put my head in the sand, so I never have to know what any of these people think or say outside of the art that I consume.
yeah.
But there is a part that does kind of long for when I was a little more naive and didn't know anything about these guys except for what Metal Maniacs told me. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I want to be more informed because I want to choose with my money in a better way
Sure.
so that I can feel better about, I mean, I don't mean that in the way it sounds, but
No,
feel
no,
better
no,
about
I-
myself. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to support things I don't
It's-
want to support.
Well, you know what? It's funny. It's kind of like when people say they want to know where their tax money is going to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
You don't want to support wars overseas.
There you
and
go.
Blah blah blah. I 100 agree with that, and I understand about wanting to go back to a certain time and kind of have that youngish that
I don't want it,
naivete
but
of youth.
it made things
Or-
easier.
or not. Yeah, not wanting it, but kind of wistfully
Yes.
daydreaming about it. Right.
Right.
But I for me, it's a little bit more satisfying knowing like I can enjoy something that's made with a pure intent.
Oh, definitely.
You know,
Definitely.
and I understand the what they're expressing
For sure.
You know, I know it takes a little bit more work.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think it's worth it. I think it's
Yeah.
worth doing the work. And again, my final thing I'll say about this when it comes down to it is my belief is each individual needs to make these decisions for themselves.
Sure. Yes, I agree. with
And
that.
more importantly to me is to respect whatever decision the people in your lives have made
I would
as
I,
best as you can.
I agree with that. I
And-
would
and
like
to-
for that
and-
to also be a thing that people take from this. Like
That's what I truly believe. Like, and understand that no matter how much you love the band, no matter how much you love the art, you should hope that the relationship you have with the people in your life should be stronger.
sure.
And that should matter most.
Yeah, yeah.
And if someone in your life doesn't want to hear, doesn't want to see, or doesn't want to go to whoever's show, then you don't force that upon them, and
Right.
and vice versa.
Right.
And it's just about respect for each other, and respect for not just, it doesn't have to be the person immediately in your life, but the people around you.
Yeah, because
You know?
don't you want to be around a group of good people?
Yeah,
Isn't this the
exactly.
thing again?
I
that
don't
we,
want to show up to shows and a bunch of Nazis are there. I just don't. I
Isn't
don't want
this
it.
the thing that we've again the metal scene, and I know the punk scene has done this, where we are accepting of people and we are able to meet new faces and friends and
Overall,
and
yes.
get new connections. You know, it's like this just makes everything stronger and better.
There it is.
Right, stronger and better. Like Aaron, these are all my own opinions on these. You know, I know a lot of people out there will differ on what they think about this. I know it's a kind of touchy subject at
Yeah.
times,
Yeah,
but let us know what you guys think.
please.
And with that, what are you listening to?
So I went down a couple great holes of The Doors and Creedence.
All right.
Yeah, just started with their number one album,
Dude,
went
fucking
all the way through.
Creedence only around for 4 fucking years, right?
I mean, it's insane when you look at their output, and it's just like every fucking album is fantastic. I mean,
yeah.
Pendulum is okay, and the ones after, but those first, the famous Trust Yourself in the first 5 Black Sabbath albums. Well, I'm going to add Creedence to that.
Yeah.
You can trust yourself in the first 5 Black Sabbath, the first 5 Creedence, because I just think their songs are so fucking amazing, and it just, what a killer band. And the Doors, same thing, really fucking cool. Getting just going back and listening through all of them. I had 3 CDs that I finally bought. I got Entombed's Wolverine Blues
Nice.
because I've been getting into them lately. I got Vision of Disorder's first album.
Oh, nice.
So I've been cranking that in the car.
Is that the reissue?
No. They're reissuing it on vinyl, but I'm just like, that's all right. I'm kind of back into CDs anyway.
Oh, I see.
I play CDs in my car, and they're just cheaper, and I just want the music. I don't really give a shit. I mean, some stuff I'll buy on vinyl if that's all they have, and then some stuff I just like on vinyl, like jazz, Sun, stuff like that. That I'm not like. It's not shit I throw in the car. Right. It's where I'm sitting at home and I want to listen to it. I usually will buy that. And the other one was Angel Corpse.
Oh hell yeah!
I'm so bad at that one. Inexonerable or something like that. Yeah. So I've been having those in the car. I found a new one this week that really, man, the moment I heard it, One-Eyed God Prophecy. Huh. Yeah. One album, 90s Quebec, depending on where I read, depends. It's either emo, screamo, or hardcore, or all three. Even places I find that says grindcore. Interestingly enough, when I hear it, I hear definitely the hardcore. I hear elements of black metal. Yeah. I have just been listening to the hell out of it. I actually, I sent it to Dan, one of our, the person we had on our show a couple of weeks ago.
Friend of the show, Dan
Kaufman, yes. Because when we interviewed him, he was saying how screamo, emo, hardcore, he very much loves that. Yeah. Loves the city of Quebec, even if the people weren't always great to him. So I thought, well, my God, this band has everything. Let me throw it at Dan. Yeah. And of course said, oh, great, I love these guys. Said they went on to be in another band called Union of Uranus, which I could not find on Spotify, but I'll be looking for it later. And then said one of the guys in the band then went on to be in, I want to say His Hero Is Gone, and then Tragedy.
Yep.
So, yeah, coming full circle because I know those are two bands you like.
Yep.
So, yeah, I got really into them. Unfortunately, you cannot find the vinyl or CD. I couldn't anyway with just a quick look. But they had a Bandcamp, pay what you want, so I did. So, nice. I made a CD of that. So I actually still have it in the car. I've been listening to that one. That's really cool. Dark, good atmosphere. The vocals very raspy, and they're kind of mid in the mix. So I don't know, man. Like I get a black metal sense from it. They probably hate that as a band. I don't know.
One-Eyed Prophet.
One-Eyed Prophet. Yeah. One-Eyed God Prophet.
One-Eyed God. Okay. Yeah. I'll check it. I know Union of Uranus.
Okay.
Just somebody had them in the past that I was around, and they told me of how like they later went into His Hero's Gone and Tragedy.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, fuck yeah, like I'm into this. But I hadn't listened to One-Eyed God Prophet.
Well, you recently had posted that you were looking for new stuff to listen to, and
yes,
I overwhelmed you. I just figure if I throw enough shit against...
I'm still going through
that.
Well,
and I assume so. And that was one of the ones I did. I just figure if I throw enough shit up against the wall, at least one of them will stick. So
yeah. Actually, you'll be surprised.
Okay, well, and again, other than that, a lot of the regulars that I go to, the Vision of Disorder. Like I said, I listen to that because I bought the CD, but also continue to listen to their stuff. Some Gangstar, Boldy James, my boy, came out with his 6th album this year. Wow. Yeah. This one, though, I really gave a chance to because he once again solidifies what I always believe. A great MC is a great MC, and a great producer / DJ is a great. But when you can put two together, it just makes an album that much better. And this time he did another album with a guy called Real Bad Man. And the last one they did is one of my favorites from him. And I thought this is just a kind of return to form. It was so good. That's cool. Especially, 6 albums this year alone. You're like, good Lord, man, I can't take them all in, bro. Yeah. So it was exciting to hear that. That was really good. Yeah, that's it. How about yourself?
Well, one of your suggestions is one that I've been listening to over and over again. Mood.
Oh, okay, cool.
The Doom album.
Cool.
That was a really good one. Yeah. I really enjoyed that one. I'm actually going to revisit it next week just because I want to kind of break it down a little bit more,
I just like how dark it feels especially for a hip hop album. And it just, the really dark feel to it. And it just kind of like you can sit in the dark and just kind of, bob your head a little bit,
Yeah. And that's what I was doing. Yeah. That's exactly what I was doing. Sitting in the dark, bobbing my head. Listened to a band called The Hypnotics, which was also recommended to me.
Okay.
Pretty cool, like garagey type stuff from Canada. I feel like they would have gone great in the 60s,
Well, okay.
Like all this stuff was coming out. That was fun.
Right on.
Then on the heavier side, I was listening to a band called Kiritsis. I hope that's how you say their name.
Okay.
Kiritsis. They have a self-titled album that just released, I think, this past month.
Oh, okay.
Sludgy, kind of hardcore-ish type of music, but
Alright.
really fucking thick.
Right on.
Right. I love the production on Sludge, especially because it's just so abrasive. Right. It's just like angry. Like when they press record, the record button just must have gotten like pissed and walked off. You know? So
It's like dirt on the track.
yeah, dude. It's just like you
I
know.
love that stuff. Yeah.
So them, and then a band from Long Beach, called Nightmare Body.
Oh, okay.
So Nightmare Body has D, which I think folks from the Long Beach area will recognize. She was one of the people who worked at Que Sera and was in a couple of other bands out there. She plays guitar in Nightmare Body. Fucking great, just thick, sludgy, black metal-y type of music.
Right on.
It's cool. It's really cool. And it's a self-titled, not
Okay.
Nightmare Body. These last two self-titled. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Right on.
You watching anything?
Actually, I just got started on a Sopranos run. Yeah, I've been getting a lot of them in my. Well, you know how reels work. You know, we watch 2 of them, and suddenly that's all you're watching.
Yeah.
And I thought, fuck it, let's go back and watch the Sopranos. One of those ones, I just saw an article that said the same thing about, it was like six things from the Sopranos that are harder to watch now than they were when you first watched it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are things that stick out. One of the things I've always said about The Sopranos is, number one, amazingly written, amazingly acted. There's no doubt about it. One of the great shows. I always had a hard time putting it in my top 5, mainly because I just never felt like I gave a shit about any of the characters because they're all such pieces of shit.
Right.
Maybe the kids, that would be the only ones because they're the only ones who didn't ask for this life,
Right.
But, everybody else is just a sociopath pieces of shit who blame the world for their fucking problems and think the only way to solve anything is through violence. So, it makes it really hard. But again, that again says maybe more about me watching it the first time that I watched it, thinking like, do they want us to think these guys are good people? And then you come to find out, through other things. And as I'm watching it, realizing, oh no, I don't think they ever wanted us to think that. I know there are people who do, but oh, Tony's so great. Oh yeah, he's a fucking gem, but it is, again, so just well done in every sense of the word. It's doing the Mulaney thing again. His show is just killing me left and right. We watched a new one in a violent
Nature.
Yeah. I don't know.
I liked it. I like that one.
I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
It felt like a one-trick pony that they just kept running the trick out, and I get it. An interesting take, an interesting way of doing it, but as Tara said, like, are we just going to get to see how many steps this guy takes? What's his pedometer read when this is all over? Some insane kills and stuff like that were just like outrageous. I get it. It's trying to be slow. It means to be slow. I totally get it.
It's like the definition of slow burn.
Absolutely. Right. And sometimes even more so where you're just like, and a lot of people who don't seem to understand their surroundings, this guy's not quiet. Like, Jesus Christ, none of you here, just little things like that.
I think that also, that it's funny you said that because when I was listening to it,
right.
I got the impression that, like, you're right, these people are not aware of their surroundings, but it's also because of the fear that that's coursing through their body, or just them being so oblivious.
Yeah, I guess.
General,
it's
right?
the girl who's doing the yoga and he's walking towards her, and it's like, good God, I can hear it. Obviously they want you to hear his footsteps because you're supposed to be from his perspective. Right. But he literally snaps a twig before she finally turns around, and you're just like, I don't. Again, it's also suspending your disbelief. That motherfucker walks into the lake and apparently can breathe underwater. At this point, I guess all bets are off. You know what I mean? Super gory. It definitely had an old school feel to it. Again, I don't hate it. I don't feel like I wasted my time. It just was one of those ones where I think I put a little more into it than it was. I thought, wow, what a killer concept. No pun intended. Well, maybe. And I thought, what a cool concept.
There is a drum set there if you want to do it.
Insert rim shot here. And I thought, we'll check it out. And again, it was these moments where you're like, how long does this thing walk?
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, that's it. How about yourself?
I watched Companion.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I liked it. I don't think I liked it only because the acting seems so overdone.
Okay.
The parts where and spoilers for all.
Yeah,
this
yeah,
shit,
no, fuck
right?
that at this point, yeah.
At this point, you should know. Spoilers abound.
Yeah.
She is a companion robot.
Yeah.
Uh,
As he says, I don't like to use the word fuck doll, but
yeah, right. It's when the Russian guy.
yeah.
I was like, well, I know he's not a good person.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
from
yeah.
off the.
Yeah.
But then when it's revealed that the other people were involved in the whole thing, I was like, okay. But then the other reveal of the other robot,
Right.
I was like, oh my god, this is getting into silly territory, especially with the cop.
Yeah.
It gets silly sometimes.
Oh,
you
I
know,
think
and-
I think it's meant to be. Yeah, I don't think it's.
So and I think that's what maybe because I can't see the visual cues, I missed some of that silliness. But to me, it just seemed like, oh, this is like a B movie or Z grade movie with a budget. You know,
I gotcha.
I don't hate watching it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's
Right.
something I ever returned to.
Yeah, but
I
I
think it
was
was a
just
fun
like-
little movie
I
that
was
just
like-
it was an interesting concept and okay, well, what if kind of thing,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
That part I kind of, and again, it's weird because like I saw the preview for it and I kind of was like, oh, she must be a robot because there's a scene where he's burning her arm and like, well, obviously a human being couldn't do that, you know what I mean? And then it's weird because then you see it on HBO and the picture reveals right away AI.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
Okay.
and it says his AI companion, and you're like, oh, we're just gonna give that away. Oh, okay. but then I also even people I've told about it, like I'm kind of giving something away, but I'm not giving it. I promise you, there's more to give away.
Yeah.
You know, she's AI. You know, but yeah, no, it's also one of those movies that now you can replay in your head and realize how many times you go, oh shit, how did I not see? Of course that. Oh yeah,
Well,
he said the thing, and you know,
Because you mentioned that it had some references to Terminator, I ended up watching Terminator afterwards.
right on.
So I did Companion and Terminator. We've been watching Hacks.
Oh, okay.
Fucking hilarious this,
All right.
this next season. I don't know if it's the last season, but it's been funny so far.
All right.
And not this last one isn't a watch, but I'm starting my yearly read of Cormac McCarthy books.
Oh, okay.
Which he did, No Country for Old Men, The Road,
Right.
and all this. So they're depressing fucking books. And
Right on.
I'm just preparing myself for the mental anguish I'm about to put myself through.
Why do we do it?
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Again, folks, let us know what you guys think about what we spoke about today. Obviously, we don't necessarily have to agree, but let's respect each other with the opinions. And if you have any feedback, let us know.
Please.
But until then, we'll catch you next time.
Later.
Hey, folks. Thank you so much for checking out the rehearsal room. We super appreciate you spending time with us. If you have any questions, comments, or want to yell at us for any of the takes we've expressed in any of these episodes, you can contact us by emailing us at therehearsalroompod@gmail.com. All one word, therehearsalroompod@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, and now on Blue Sky. Also, if you have any recommendations for any movies or any bands you might want us to check out and give a listen to, feel free to send those in. We always accept submissions. Or if you have any shows coming up that you feel we might be interested in checking out, let us know and we'll give you guys a shout out. But thank you for checking us out, and we'll catch you next time.